Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku gave it his all at the Yuuei Sports Festival. All credits for this video go to their respective authors. So please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Following the villain attack at the USJ, the Yuuei Sports Festival began in earnest, undeterred by potential threat of a subsequent strike as security was strengthened to quintuple its previous measures. The sports festival was more than just a way for Hero Course students to show off to potential agencies and sponsors. It was also a way for those who fell short at the entrance exam to get promoted into the Hero Course and pursue their dreams of becoming a great hero anew. One such student was going to give it everything he had, plus ultra style. Now, without any further delay, let's get the first event started. Nimurikayama Aka, the R-rated hero, Midnight, boldly proclaimed from the referee's stand following the quote-unquote speech given by Katsuki Bakugo, the highest-scoring participant of the entrance exam. These are the qualifying rounds, and it's here that many are sent home crying every year. Thus, the first event of this year's sports festival, she announced as the jumbo screen behind her became alight with a massive slot machine-esque reel. The event placards spinning wildly in a blur of color before revealing this obstacle course race. For those of you not familiar with this event type, the obstacle course race is exactly as the name implies, a race between every member of all 11 classes. Midnight announced as the massive gates at one end of the arena began to open. The course is a 4-kilometer lap around the stadium itself. Our school preaches freedom in all things, so as long as you don't go off the course, anything is fair game. The rules laid down, tension began to mount amidst the participating classes. Those wanting to push themselves purely for the sake of competition. Those with something to prove. Those willing to stab one another in the back. As many reasons for as many people to compete culminating in a single location. Racers, to your positions. The competitors shifting their feet to get a better grip on the stadium ground. The 3 lights above the gate began to alight in sequence. Ready, set, go. The blaring of a horn and a starting gun firing off. The gathered students all surged forward in a veritable stampede. Quirks of all sorts steadily coming to bear as dreams and aspirations clashed against one another. The gauntlet sufficiently thrown down. Everyone poured into the gate leading to the obstacle course proper and the first hurdle. However, as bodies frantically pressed against one another, elbows and knees flying every which way as tensions grew. The starting gate itself, Izuku's keen mind deduced the moment bodies began pressing against him and all his forward momentum ground to a halt. The first filter, Todoroki thought, unknowingly finishing Izuku's train of thought, willing his right half to life. A sudden cold front swept through the tunnel, the temperature dropping like a lead weight as the moisture in the air began to crystallize. As Shoto broke away from the pack, all those in his wake cried out angrily as they found their feet frozen to the ground. Youch, I'm all frozen. Can't move. So cold. That bastard. Sorry, but it's for the best that you all remain here, Shoto thought as he ran. Too easy, Todoroki. A familiar voice punctuated by explosions sounded out. I ain't letting you get ahead that easy, half and half. Katsuki Bakugo shouted as he used his quirk to fly above the rank and file, his fellow classmates using their own superhuman abilities to soar above the competition, passing through the first filter. I expected more from our class, but more made it past than I thought there would, Shoto thought to himself as he glanced over his shoulder. Good thinking, staying 2 steps ahead of us, Todoroki, but now it's my turn. Mine to Minoru cried as he used his to hop, skip, and jump his way towards him, his small stature giving him speed and agility in relation to their size that most of his peers lacked. How about a taste of my ultimate technique, Grape RUUS? Before the grape-headed teen could finish his declaration, a blocky blur of green suddenly swept in from nowhere and struck him in his exposed left flank, tears streaming from the teen's eyes as he was sent for a loop. Minta, Izuku cried in shock as the faux villains from the entrance exam began to appear where the track opened up. That's right folks, every obstacle course needs obstacles. Present Mike commentated enthusiastically. And what better obstacle to start out with than Robo-INFERNOOO? He cried as the looming forms of a half-dozen zero-pointers began to amble towards them. It's the zero-pointers from the exam. Seriously, the Hero Course kids had to fight those. Too many. There's no way past. Various students began to cry out as they gave in to despair. So these are the faux villains they used for everyone else's test. Shoto hummed as he observed the mounting wall of metal before him, having gotten in on recommendation. This was the first time he'd ever beheld these mechanical entities. Where'd they even find the money for these? Momo Yaorazu questioned as she appraised the value of the exterior metal components alone, let alone the cost of their internal components, labor, and maintenance. HMPH. Kinda wished they'd prepared something a little more threatening. Shoto hummed as the zero-pointers turned their attention toward the frontmost target, himself. A massive mechanical hand bearing down towards him. Once more Todoroki willed the moisture around him to chill. A crystallizing wave of ice sweeping across the ground and cradling the underside of the zero-pointers as he threw up his hand, stopping them in their tracks. "Hey," he stopped them. "We can get through that gap," the hopeful student cried. "Bad idea. I froze them in pretty unstable positions so they'd fall," Shoto said plainly as the ice entombing the zero-pointers began to crack until breaking entirely, an earth-shaking avalanche of steel closing off his own avenue. Oh, 1A's Todoroki busted through Robo Inferno and sabotaged his competitors in a single move. Talk about ice cold. Present Mike crooned as the dust began to settle. "Come on, think. Izuku cried to himself as his peers began to surmount this second obstacle in their own way, his own feet firmly on the ground as his peers soared. "How do I get past this?" he asked as his mind raced. The next moment, a figure with shiny brown hair shot past him, zipping easily around the lesser foe villains and leaving an impressive cloud of dust in their wake. "Yuuei, so fast," Izuku gawped. "But wait, if that isn't Ada, then who?" he asked as the figure dove into the wreckage of the zero-pointers with reckless abandon. Limbs contorting, Izuku could only follow the figure for a few moments before they squeezed into impossibly tight and narrow spaces, following after Todoroki faster than those taking a more vertical approach. MHA. After breezing through the second obstacle, Shoto Todoroki continued his jog through the obstacle race, assured that collapsing the off-balance zero-pointers would enable him a few extra minutes of breathing room before any sort of competition began to catch up. However, that sentiment swiftly died in his mind as the sound of rushing air and rapid footsteps met his ears. Looking over his left shoulder, Shoto briefly glimpsed a flash of oily brown hair amidst the cone of dust that shot past him a moment later, leaving him sufficiently in it as the dust maker continued to widen the gap between itself and... Was that Ida? Shoto thought as his leading position was stolen from him. No, Ida's never moved that fast. And even if he could, I couldn't hear his. This has to be someone new. Someone with a significant speed advantage, the teen thought as he picked up the pace. While his combination of was indeed powerful, it didn't magically allow him to keep pace with those who had superior physical abilities. And it wasn't hard to believe that someone like that might slip between the cracks just because they couldn't destroy military-grade robots on demand. MHA. Incredible. Shoto Todoroki, whose lead has been largely uncontested, has just been left in the dust. Literally. Present Mike crooned as one of the camera bots picked up the sudden upset. A certain flame-faced second-place hero's beard flaring up in anger at said upset. The current leaders of the pack are overwhelmingly from Class 1A, but it looks like we've got a dark horse in this contest. So epic. Class 1A knows there's no time to hesitate. Shota Aizawa ruminated as he watched the various feats. They've been exposed to the outside world, up close and personal. They've had that fear planted in them, and they've endured it, overcome it. Each has grown from that experience, and forgotten what it means to hesitate. Though as his eyes turned to the dark horse of the obstacle course race. However, the sports festival is exactly the kind of place where those who couldn't shine during the entrance exam are able to stand out in a way more conducive to those whose quirks aren't as flashy or destructive as their contemporaries. He then thought as the gap between Todoroki and first place continued to widen. All right, folks, it looks like our dark horse has reached the second obstacle. Fall and you're out. You'll have to crawl across if you want to make it. Present Mike announced as the aerial drones revealed the next obstacle. This is the FALL, a collection of earthen pillars jutting out of a pitch-black abyss interconnected randomly by a series of tightropes. Our dark horse is the first to make it, so how will he use the massive lead he has on his competition? At this, said dark horse regarded the obstacle before him, two thin strands of hair, now revealed to be antennae, flickering as the wind howled between the earthen pillars, memorizing the layout of the pillars and their respective tightropes. The oily-haired brunette pulled his shirt over his head as he stepped back once, twice, 10 times, then turned around completely and ran off, his uniform shirt fluttering to the ground, much to the shock of announcer and spectators alike as he ran away from the fall. MHA. Whoever that was that passed me a minute ago. His speed was nothing short of incredible, Shoto found himself admitting as he jogged hastily towards the third obstacle. Huh, is that? Squinting his eyes in the morning sun, Shoto realized that the owner of the dust cloud from before was backtracking towards him, allowing the dual wielder of to get a better look at the one who had completely eclipsed him moments before as they dug their heels into the ground and came to a stop next to him. Clad in the same Yuuei Academy P. uniform as himself sans the shirt, the student was of average height with a lean muscular build, his face plain though leaning towards feminine, but not so feminine they'd be mistaken for a girl. His shoulder-length hair glistened as though it were oiled, parted away from his face with a pair of foot-long antennae sticking out from atop his head. Before Shoto could discern what kind of mutant-type quirk his competitor possessed, They had taken a massive gulp of air before shooting off like a rocket from whence he came, twice over leaving him in the dust. This is starting to get annoying, Todoroki grumbled to himself as he shook the dirt out of his uniform and hair. MHA. Holy cow, that general course student is really booking. Present Mike gawped as aforementioned student once again passed Todoroki, his speed nothing short of incredible as he left a cone of dust in his wake. But wait, he isn't going to try and jump it, is he? Someone with such an advanced understanding of their quirk wouldn't attempt to build that much speed back up unless they had a plan in mind, Aizawa stated as he monitored the feat. However, speed like this could easily backfire. If he doesn't have the reflexes to match, he could just as easily run himself out of bounds. Well, it's a good thing we have adequate padding down there, otherwise it could be a bit of a splash zone. Everyone's eyes on the competitor as the camera-equipped aerial drones struggled to keep up. The amount of runway remaining before the edge of the fall continued to shrink more and more with every passing second, spectators sucking in a breath wondering whether or not the brown-haired student would fall in or not. Their unspoken question was answered when a cloud of dust was kicked up at the very edge of the second obstacle, an errant gust of wind revealing a crater with 2 shoeprints in the bottom, their creator soaring through the air. It looks like discarding his shirt earlier was done to reduce drag and air resistance, Aizawa hummed. Glad he didn't take off his pants. This program's still PG-13, Present Mike added. The student nearing the zenith of his flight, the drones following after him were able to get a shot of his back, revealing 2 chitinous brown plates with a similar oily sheen to his hair. The next moment a pair of insectile wings folded out to full size, fluttering wildly. So he's an amazing bug-like mutant, Present Mike hummed enthusiastically. But it doesn't look like he has enough airtime left to clear the fall in a single bound. Whatever will he do? He asked with dramatic flair, the brown-haired insect-like teen positioning both arms behind him in a way that Aizawa found reminiscent of Katsuki Bakugo when he used his as a mid-air booster rocket during the 50-meter dash. Said teen inhaled a large breath of air as gravity began to take hold of him once more, his fluttering wings doing very little to save off the inevitable. Ultimate move. The insect-like teen intoned as many pores in the palms of his hands began to dilate until they resembled twin circular vents. Goki thruster, he called out, the vents in his hands releasing a loud engine-like hiss as he was suddenly shot forward with renewed energy, the far edge of the fall growing closer and closer with each passing moment. Empty space swiftly rising up to meet him even with his added inertia. The teen leaned forward and positioned both palms beneath himself in a Hadoken-like pose, his wings retracting into his back as lines of throbbing veins snaked their way down his arms. Goki blast. Whoa, did he just do a double jump? Present Mike gawped as a much louder engine-like hiss erupted from the teen's palms, giving him the extra kick needed to clear the fall in a single bound. And like that, our dark horse has left another obstacle in the dust, he announced as the competitor took a moment to catch his breath before ascending the stairs toward the final obstacle. Alright folks, I know it feels a bit early compared to previous years, but it's time to announce the final barrier. Are you serious? The oily-haired dark horse asked with a twitching brow and antennae to match as he beheld the sign that greeted him. Danger. Mines. That's right. The third obstacle is a deadly Afghan carpet, the minefield, Present Mike announced as the dark horse beheld the expansive field before him, circular discs of recently upturned earth revealing the location of aforementioned mines. A quick glance is enough to reveal the mines' locations, so keep your eyes open and watch your step, new guy. We're all rooting for ya. Well, the oily-haired brunette hummed as he paused to catch his breath. At least they made it kind of easy. I should probably mention, our mines don't pack a deadly punch, but they're loud and flash enough that you might need a change of underwear when it's all over. Depending on the individual, of course, the bandage-muffled voice of Eraserhead commented. Fresh pants will be available to anyone who needs them afterwards. Present Mike added, remember what your mom told you. If you have time to think, you have time to move. The oily-haired teen thought as he regarded the obstacle before him one more time. However, with his then current vantage point, it was incredibly difficult to map out the far side of the minefield from where he was standing. Guess there's only one way around it then. Wait, is he doing what I think he's doing? Present Mike asked as the dark horse turned around and rounded the corner, backtracking towards the fall, albeit at a more sedate pace than before. Given what he's shown us, I wouldn't put it past him, Aizawa stated as the oily-haired teen backtracked until he had the stairs at the tail end of the fall at his back. Looking over his shoulder to see that the runner-up, Shoto Todoroki, had yet to reach the fall, the teen took his time filling his lungs with air time and time again, forcing the good air in and the bad air out as his skin breathed. Dropping down onto all fours, his toes digging into the dirt for lack of starting blocks, the crowd in the arena slowly grew silent, the tension mounting as, for a brief moment, you could almost hear a pin drop. However, that all changed when the ground at the teen's feet exploded underneath him, off like a shot once again as the crowd erupted into cheers at the show going on before them. The mass media utterly devouring the sudden upset of the entire hero course being summarily eclipsed like this by a complete unknown. Faster, 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 the brunette chanted as he continued to pick up speed, the minefield growing closer and closer by the second as he poured on the BLPS. Max speed, he roared out as he poured on a final burst of speed, diving into the minefield headlong as fast as his legs could carry him. The brunette crossing entire meters with every passing second, antennae drawn backwards from atop his head. A nearly inaudible click heralded a large plume of pink-tinged smoke as one of the mines went off, their detonator literally several steps ahead of them by the time the cloud reached its zenith. To everyone's amazement, this trend continued to hold. Pink plumes of smoke belching upward into the air every few seconds, but much too late to impede the one that set off the trigger. The brown-haired blur tearing a dusty contrail across the minefield until he'd passed the last row of explosives. Nothing left to bar him from absolute victory as he entered the final bottleneck, a near-perfect mirror of the first aside from the fact it was completely unoccupied. IIINCREDIBLLE. Present Mike shouted as the brown-haired teen exploded from the darkness and into the light, meeting a typhoon of cheering spectators and adulation upon his arrival. At a record-shattering 4 minutes and 30 seconds, he announced as the record breaker unfurled his wings like parachutes on a fighter jet and unleashing concentrated jets of air from his palms right in front of him. The absolutely undisputed winner of the obstacle course race, he said, pausing for effect. Genki Gakabari of the general course. What an upset, he cried out, the audience exploding into cheers as the previous record of 10 minutes and 40 seconds was completely annihilated. Incredible. At a record-shattering 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the winner of the obstacle course race, Genki Gakabari of the general course. Present Mike screamed into the microphone, the audience exploding into cheers as the previous record of 11 minutes and 8 seconds was completely annihilated. What? No way, Izuku cried, his stomach sinking, as first place was snatched away from him. So fast. Tenya gaped. Damn it, Bakugo cried as he tore through the air after the Noskin placed Todoroki. The news that first place had been taken swept through the competitors like a dread wave. Many who had just passed Robo Inferno or were still being held up at it gave up altogether, despite the fact that the most any of them could aspire to now was first loser. The many hopefuls that refused to give up redoubled their efforts, the fall coming up for many. Looks like it's my turn to make a splash, Tsuyuasui hummed as she dropped down to her haunches before leaping into the air, speedily creeping across the tightrope with her mutant-born agility and dexterity. So fast. Mina Ashido gaped, Ochako Uraraka right beside her. Their musings were then cut off by a frenzied chuckling. Ho 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 ho. Time for my support items to get the spotlight. Meihatsum of the support course chuckled. I may have lost out to someone from the general course, but that's okay. As long as my babies get the recognition they deserve, it's still my win. Wait, she's allowed to have those things? Mina complained, witnessing a plethora of gadgets on the pink-haired girl's person. Don't complain. You hero course kids have all sorts of practical combat training, so it's only fair that the support course gets to bring in their own work, Mei argued. Provided, of course, that they're items and costumes we developed ourselves. She hummed in satisfaction at leaving her own peers in 1 Fahrenheit in the dust. No one from the support course would call her class the bronze medal after today. Of course, even amidst the banter and creative quirk use, Shoto Todoroki was even now well ahead of his peers, using his to glide across the now frozen tightropes with the help of his specialized souls. Even though first place was now beyond his grasp, he had no intention of giving up second place without a fight. The first thing that Shoto noticed when he reached the minefield was that there was already a line of mines that had been detonated by the now-known Genki. However, the line didn't cut through all of the mines in a neat line. Based on the speed displayed previously, it only made sense that his strides were far longer than his own, so even if he took the exact same route, he'd still need to be wary of the mines Genki hadn't detonated in his attempt to outrun them. So, the minefields designed in such a way that those in the lead would be forced to slow their pace, Shoto noted to himself as he carefully towed around the mines. There wasn't any way of knowing how much concussive force each one had. But given Genki had been able to clear the previous record and completely annihilate it, it only made sense that one would need substantial speed to outrun the mines. While he could make a carpet of ice and walk across it that way, that would only create a free ride for his peers to catch up to and possibly overwhelm him. As if crap like this can slow me down. Katsuki Bakugo raged as he flew through the air with his explosive quirk, quickly surpassing Todoroki with minimum effort. Hey, your declaration of war was to the wrong person. As Shoto and Katsuki began their super-powered brawl amidst the minefield, competitors from the fall began to file in, each taking their own route around the minefield in an attempt to circumvent it. Those that were truly desperate weren't mindful enough of their footing and were sent flying completely out of bounds, revealing that the non-lethal mines still weren't a joke. Students with sensory abilities could afford to pick up the pace a bit, but still had to be mindful, especially with how the costs of a single mistake had been shown by those knocked out of bounds. Tenya even attempted to match the feat of the obstacle course race's own record breaker, only for his then current speed to be insufficient after more than 2 mines. With Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki juggling second and third place like a hot potato, a second dark horse revealed itself in the form of Izuku Midoriya, who by combining a zero-pointer's armor plate from Robo Inferno with the abundance of mines available to him, was able to compound them together into a single massive explosion that sent him hurling across the minefield. Whatever the case, Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya is in hot pursuit of second place, Shoto and Bakugo falling even further away from first place. The two abandoned their super-powered grapple with one another in an attempt to overtake he whom had overtaken them. Izuku, however, even with the knowledge that the most he could aspire to was second place, had not given up, planting his feet firmly on their own shoulders as the last of his momentum died out. The green-haired teen swung his armored plate down onto the mines between them, knocking the two sidling while flinging himself out of the minefield and into the home stretch. In a stunning move, Izuku Midoriya bursts past his classmates in 1A. "Just what the heck are you teaching these kids, Eraser Hat?" Present Mike announced, spurring those in the minefield on into even greater feats of daring as the single-digit ranks began to slip away. Though most of the fanfare had died down in the 5 minutes following Genki Gakuberi's out from behind victory, Izuku was still met with a wall of applause as he burst into the light, mere moments before Shoto and Katsuki trailed in after him in 3rd and 4th place respectively. As the potential remaining slots began to dwindle, those in the minefield redoubled their efforts, would-be competitors for the next stage of the sports festival pouring in one after the other. "Deku, that was awesome," Ochako congratulated, covered in sweat and out of breath as she came in at 17th place. "To lose a race of all things with my quirk. It's clear I still have much more progress to make," Tenya stated to himself, coming in at 7th place. "And to think that someone with such phenomenal speed was hiding under our very noses," the bespectacled teen said as he beheld the record-breaking general course student, whom was left standing awkwardly in the middle of the field all by himself. "I guess it's true what they say. There's always someone better." "Yeah, there is," Izuku hummed, while second place was nothing to scoff at. Like so many of his peers in 1A, he felt just a little bit robbed, losing out first place to someone who wasn't even in the hero course to begin with. The antennae and chitinous plates on his back are definitely traits of a mutant-type quirk, but I'm still lacking sufficient evidence to postulate just what kind of insect-like quirk Genki is in possession of. As Izuku went on into another fit of muttering, one such student who felt robbed by the outcome of the first event made his opinion on the matter known in a very vocal fashion. "Hey you," Bakugo shouted as he stomped violently towards the first-place winner, the oily-haired teen leaping in his skin as the explosive teen bore down on him. "Just who the hell do you think you are stealing away first place from me?" "Hey, chill out, man. You're going to cause a scene," Genki said as he raised his hands and gave off a disarming smile, slowly backpedaling from the volatile teen. Of course, the suddenly movement served to only further infuriate the explosive teen. "Stand still so I can kick your ass, AAUGH." Before he could finish his threat, however, Katsuki suddenly flew head over heels, letting out an extremely undignified yelp as he completely lost his balance, landing on the ground in a heap, swearing up a storm as Genki continued to back away from the aggressive teen. "Kaken," Izuku yelped in shock of what transpired, his mind whirling a mile a minute as he caught sight of a glistening residue on Bakugo's shoes, his eyes then following towards the general course student that had been backing away. "As shoes, they have perforated soles just like Ashido's," the teen realized, getting a better look at his footwear. "Could he have two?" No, that wouldn't explain the speed he displayed, even with a lubricant under his feet. What kind of insect has that power? As more and more of the leading slots for the obstacle course race were taken up, it was soon made abundantly clear just how alone Genki was. Apart from one other general course student and one support course student, literally everyone else was from the hero course. "All right then, that's the last of them," Midnight announced as Yuuei Aoyama ambled into the arena, clenching at his stomach. "The top 42 from this qualifying round will move on to the second event. Comment celeporate illutre," Yuuei asked, slipping into his native tongue, after realizing he was 43rd. "But for those of you who placed lower, don't worry, we've got other events where you can show your stuff," she said to console the losers. "But now, the main selection can really begin. The press are going to be jumping out of their seats, so be sure to give it everything you've got in the second event." And like this, the tension began to mount once more. Out of the hundreds that attempted the obstacle course race, only 42 remain. Just how much further would they be culled until the final event, the annual battle tournament? Dying in suspense are you. Well, don't worry. I know how to be merciful. Midnight cooed as the same roulette from before began to spin. Following that stunning first round, the second event of the Yuuei Sports Festival, this cavalry battle, participants will, on their own, form teams of 2 to 4 members each and get into a horse and rider formation. Midnight explained as visuals consisting of 13, present Mike, and All Might himself appeared on the screen behind her. The rules are the same as those cavalry battles from middle school. Snag your opponent's headbands while guarding your own. The one exception, each of you has been assigned a point value based on your ranking in the last event. Will earn points like in the entrance exam. Sounds simple, Rikido Sato hummed. So the point value of each team depends on its members. Mina smiled. I was just about to explain that, so shut up already. The R-rated hero raged at being interrupted. As I was saying, 42nd place has a point value of 5. 41st has a point value of 10, 40th has a point value of 15, and so on. However, she said, pausing for dramatic effect, for our first place dark horse competitor, Genki Gakaberi. I don't like the way she's looking at me. The oily-haired teen shivered as Midnight's stare caused the other's eyes to gravitate towards him. Our record breaker will be receiving a special point value of 10 million points. 10 million? Genki gulped audibly, suddenly feeling very, very small as 41 pairs of eyes descended upon him, a terrifying hunger in their eyes as the general course student found himself swiftly ostracized, even more so than he was before. Even his peer Hitoshi Shinso leered at him hungrily, a confident smirk on his face. The higher-ranked students are the ones to aim for, so this survival game is a chance for a big comeback. It's anyone's game, Midnight said as she continued to feed the fire. Good luck, Jin-kun. You're going to need it, the femme fatale said with a wink that might have set the teen's heart aflutter, if not for the fact he was fearing for his life. I'm going to die. I'm going to fucking die. Genki shivered, feeling very much like his namesake as the gauntlet was thrown. MHA. As Midnight went on to explain, the cavalry battle would last for 15 minutes. To a spectator, it might not be much time at all, but for those in the thick of it, it may as well have been an eternity for all the adrenaline that was bound to be pumping. The rider would be wearing a headband displaying the sum points of their team, the main stipulation being that they had to be around the neck or higher. The more of them there were, the harder they'd be to manage, and even if one was taken, even if the horse was knocked down, until that timer hit 0, you still had a fighting chance. Midnight went on to explain that unlike the middle school sports festivals, quirks were allowed and even encouraged. However, maliciously attacking another team with the intent of knocking them over would result in a red card and immediate disqualification from the cavalry battle and subsequent battle tournament. Of course, no matter whom Genki managed to ring into joining him, their point value would still be set in the octuple digits, meaning he'd have a giant bullseye on his forehead or neck no matter who he chose. It also didn't help matters that on top of knowing no one around him, he only had 15 minutes to convince anyone to join his team. Of course, saying he knew no one wasn't necessarily true. He knew Shinso, but like everyone else, he too had his eyes on that 10 million point bullseye. And knowing how that guy's mind worked, he was probably going to keep the deeper mechanics of his quirk hidden until the very last moment, possibly aiming for dark horse status himself. So yeah, even though he'd managed to break the old record and make a name for himself on that alone, if he didn't get the most out of those 15 minutes before the cavalry battle, he could consider his second chance over. Alright, Genki, think. What would your father say to you at a time like this? The almost lone general course student thought to himself, racking his brain as the hero course students began to form their own cliques, planning the oily-haired teen's demise and ruination. Well, that's no help, he thought as he imagined his father's extremely minimal vocal response to such a scenario. Okay, what would your mother say? He asked himself, hoping a maternal source of wisdom would yield better results. Remember, Jen-chan, the key to getting people's attention as a pro hero is sex appeal. Sex sells, so don't be afraid to show a little skin. Women have needs too, you know. And like that, my last hope dies. Genki whimpered. No, he said, clapping his hands loudly on his face. No, I've come too far to give up now. I'm all alone down here, so I'll have to think of something, he told himself, antennae flicking atop his head, steady picking up every minute change in air pressure around him. His eyes darted around until he spotted a student in as desperate straits as he, unwilling to let his potential source of salvation slip away. The oily-haired teen was off in a shot, kicking up dust much to the consternation of his peers as he scooped 19th place up into his arms and whisked him away to the far corner of the field like an American football. Quit screaming, Genki shouted at the grape-headed hero course student. Name, what is it? Minoru Maita. The grape-headed teen quivered in the wake of his borderline abduction. Team up with me, Genki shouted, going straight for the jugular. With your body type and my speed, we can't possibly lose. That's right. I'm small, so you can carry me all by yourself. Minda said, eyes lighting up as he realized his character design actually had a pro to it, rather than just cons. While his preferred choice was to team up with a girl, getting a free ride to the final round was good too. Plus, after what he did to Momo in the obstacle course race, his female peers had made their opinions of him abundantly known. While I don't completely agree with how you literally piggybacked off that one girl to make it past the first round, it's what put the idea into my head. You aren't too heavy, so I won't be bogged down all that much, Genki said, holding Minda up by the armpits. Of course, that isn't the only reason I asked you to join. You want me to give you the down low on my classmates' quirks, right? Minda asked as he glanced at his peers, quickly catching on. As many details as you can remember. I was able to hide the bulk of my quirk during the last round, but with the way that green-headed kid's been staring at me, I think it's safe to assume my quirk won't be secret from the hero course for much longer, he said as said green-haired kid glanced at him once more, a myriad of theories glinting behind intelligent green eyes. Yeah, the guy does seem a bit obsessed, Minda said watching Izuku get his team together. Hey there, Mr. First Place. A manically enthused voice suddenly spoke up. UGH, Minda screamed in shock. Oh, hello, you're from the support course, correct? Genki asked, feeling her approach the moment she stepped in his general direction. That's right, Hatsume's the name, and support items are my game, the girl said enthusiastically as she lugged a large white crate behind her before walking right up to him, snatching his hand and enthusiastically shaking it up and down. As is not knowing the meaning of personal boundaries. Apparently, Genki thought as the girl got right up in his face, her nose practically brushing against his. I have no clue who you are, but I could definitely be useful to someone in your position. Plus, teaming up with you means me and my babies will be smack dab in the spotlight. All the industry big shots will have no choice but to notice my super cute baby. Babies, Genki and Minda asked, albeit with differing inflections. In the support course, we develop equipment to make heroes' quirks easier to use. I've got plenty of my babies here, and I'm sure you'll find one or two that suit you, Mei said, throwing the lid of her trunk open, before swiftly kicking it over and allowing the contents to spill out across the ground in full display of their splendor. The fact that her stockpile of wares now resembled the contents of a yard sale, however, made it a little less impressive to behold. Don't you think you should treat your stuff a bit more gently? Minda asked as he turned some of the gear over. He had no clue what most of it even did, but even he knew not to toss your stuff onto the ground so callously. My babies are tough, just like their grandpa, Mei said chipperly as she picked up a gun-shaped implement, roughly clapping the dust off of it like she were beating an old TV. Besides, what good's a support item if it can't take a beating? She asked with a strange manic glee. That's an excellent point, Genki hummed as he began looking some of the gear over. Not all heroes could be speedy like Ed shot and dodge everything thrown their way. Some had to tank hits, so any support items they wielded had to be Tonka tough, as the Americans put it. Wait, is this a jetpack? Yep, it's modeled after a certain hero's backpack. With a few additions of my own, of course, Mei said chipperly. Okay, we might be able to work with some of this, Genki hummed looking the gear over. Mei, tell me what all this stuff does. Minda, tell me everything you know about 1A's quirks. If we go out there without a plan, this 10 million point headband's as good as gone, so let's brainstorm. Minda, you ready for this? Genki asked as he slipped on a replacement shirt. You bet I am, Minda said as he synced the 10,125 headband around his head, situating himself on Genki's shoulders. They want to take this thing from me. They'll have to pry it off my cold dead scalp. Love the enthusiasm, because it might just come down to that, Genki said, trying to make light of it all. Mei, how are your support items? Green across the board, El Capitan, Mei said as her hover boots whirred to life, lifting her feet above the ground as she adjusted the harness linking the two teens together. Alright, the name of the game is Run for Your Lives. Mei, you keep your hover boots online. I'll be the engine dragging you along, so this leaves your hands free to deploy support items, he stated, the girl nodding her head enthusiastically. Minda, use your quirk as much as physically possible and warn me of anyone trying to flank us from range. I'll keep us on the move until the final timer. Can you really keep it up for that long? Minda asked. This isn't like the obstacle course race where I have lots of runway to build up speed. If anything, I'll only be able to reach half my max BLPS before I run the risk of running us out of bounds. And that's if I highball it, Genki confessed. Even if I can't destroy military-grade robots right now, if anything, I'm at least proud of my stamina. Oh really? Mei said with a manic glint in her eyes. I might just have a use for that kind of stamina. Minda, if you get an erection from this, I'm going to tuck you under my arm like a football, I swear to God, Genki said flatly. Minda was very upfront about his wants, so his personality was rather transparent and easy to predict. Gee, got it, Minda returned. You sure all this stuff's good to go? He asked, looking at the equipment they were all clad in. You bet your bottom yen it is. But why do I only have this one thing? You two have tons of gear, Minda complained as he held a type of net launcher that could fire up to 5 times before reloading. Mind, you're too small to use anything but that capture item, Genki stated as he adjusted the harness May had synced around his torso. Fanning upward from his shoulders were thin wing-like protrusions with 6 adjustable air jets dangling from the ends. Strapped to his legs were what looked like high-tech leg braces that synced around his thighs and ankles, sleek guards on his knees. You only have 5 shots and there isn't any extra ammo, so only use it as an absolute last resort, he said before looking over his shoulder at May. May herself, in addition to the hover boots that had carried her through the previous event, May had equipped herself with some kind of foam gun filled with viscous white fluid connected to a backpack. Between the 3 of them, without anything to significantly reduce their weight, the jetpack wasn't really all that viable a tool, and Genki's speed alone made the hover boots a more useful implement. Also, because she'd jury-rigged her own arrow launcher harness from the previous event and synced it to Genki's own, May was now firmly attached to her team, even when she was using her hands to operate her other support items. So, we've got a few minutes remaining. Mind going over everyone's quirks again so we're all on the same page? Genki asked as he looked around. Because their team had the highest point value, they'd been situated in the dead center of the arena, every set of eyes focused solely on them. Alright, let's see. Mind hummed as he looked around. Over there, you see that green-haired kid who came in second right behind you. That's Midoriya Izuku. His quirk's really similar to All Might's, but he's more like a glass cannon than a meat tank. Situated as the front of the horse is Ida Tenya. His quirk lets him run really fast. The back left is Uraraka Ochako. Her quirk lets her nullify gravity for whatever she touches. And the back right is Takoyami Fumikage. His quirk is basically like something from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I see, Genki nodded, taking note of the green-haired Midoriya. A red 690 slapped across his forehead. Next we have Todoroki Shoto. He can freeze things solid. Yaorazu Momo can synthesize any material she can think of, but she needs to expose her skin to do it. Kaminari Denki has a quirk that lets him electrocute everything around him. Todoroki Shoto, the son of the number 2 hero. Endeavor, Genki hummed regarding the white and red-haired teen he'd left in the dust twice over, a 415 plastered across his forehead. HRMM, his team looks a little bare. Well, the guy can be a bit of a prude, so it's to be expected. Plus, he probably really sucks at asking people for help. Minda shrugged before getting back to the topic at hand. Over there we have Bakugo Katsuki, the guy who made everyone pissed at him at the beginning. Yeah, I remember that guy. Can anyone say anger management issues? What about ego? Katsuki's quirk basically lets him fire off explosions from his hands. The spiky-haired guy in front, Ijiru Kirishima, can turn himself rock hard. The girl on the left, Ashido Mina, can produce addies, and the guy on the right, Siro Hanta, can fire tape from his elbows. I wonder what he does about shirts. Genki hummed as the teen with the 645 on his forehead glowered at him. Over there we have Asui Tsuyu and Shoji Mizo. Asui can basically do anything a frog can do, and Shoji is a muscly octopus that can grow eyes, ears, mouths, and noses on the ends of his arms. Oh, the cute mutant-type girl, Genki hummed as he beheld the girl's 285 headband. Are those guys over there missing someone? He said, turning to another one team, seemingly absent a rider. Oh, that must be Hagakure Toru's team. Minda drooled as he beheld the topless invisible girl. Hagakure has the power to be invisible 24 divided by 7 divided by 365. Rikido Sato gets roid rage whenever he eats sugar. Jiro Kyoka has the ability to project sound waves through her extending earlobes. And Kota Koji has the ability to talk to animals. I hope he doesn't sick any birds on us. Not a big fan, the teen grumbled. Oh, and over there with that purple-haired kid is Mashirao Ajiro. His quirk gives him a really muscly tail. For some reason, he looks really out of it. Minda hummed as he looked at his remaining peer, the blonde-haired teen vacantly staring in front of himself as he and a 1B student supported the only other general course student. Whatever you two do, don't talk to the guy with purple hair. In fact, let's stay far away from him. Genki hummed as he glanced Shinso's way before focusing back on the teams nearest him. Why so defensive? They asked. Let's just say he can really get into your head. And leave it at that. Og, time's up. Minda cried as their 15-minute countdown timer finally reached 0. Your 15 minutes are up. Time to get started. Midnight said, doing some arm stretches. That's right, folks. Our 13 teams have been assembled. They're lined up and ready to move. Present Mike announced. Interesting. The teams they've come up with, Aizawa grumbled, still half asleep. Here it comes. The starting signal. Blood begets blood in this pulse-pounding match. Present Mike screamed as everyone synced their headbands around their head. Team Gakaberry's 10,125 the apple of everyone's eye. 3, 2, 1, start. Minoru, Hatsum, let's do this. Genki roared as the match began in earnest and countless aspirant heroes bore down on them. This is really a fight for the 10 million. And everyone knows it. Tetsu cried, running 685 points strong. Ha 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 ha. We're coming for you, Gen-kun. Toru cackled giddily. Her male teammates unsure where to look. BASTARRRRRRD. Bakugo raged. I don't care if you're in the general course. We're coming at you with everything we have. Izuku shouted out. You won't get away from us. Ida shouted as he, Ochako, Fumikage, and Izuku bore down on Genki's team faster than anyone. Big mistake. Genki shouted as Mei's hover boots whirred to life and oil poured out of his perforated soles. Goki thruster. He roared as a hiss-like roar exploded from his palms, propelling his team sidelong at the last moment while Ida's feet hit the oil slick with a loud squelch. Oh no, Ochako cried as their team's momentum turned on them. The group swiftly screaming towards the out-of-bounds line at the edge of the field no matter what they did. Uraraka, make us all lighter. Izuku called out. What? I have a plan. Trust me. Hi. The brunette replied as she tapped every member of her team and herself for last, staving off the nausea as best she could. Everyone, hold on. Izuku called out as their feet left the ground, the out-of-bounds line passing underneath them with scarcely a moment to spare. Don't let the egg break. Don't let the egg break. Don't let the egg break. Izuku chanted to himself as they neared the edge of the arena. His arm becoming alight with, he swung it out, launching a gale of wind into the audience in front of him, sending him and his team back into bounds. As his team staggered to regain their footing, Team Gakaberi was already well away from them. Mei, your babies are amazing. Genki awed as he ran, the leg gear following his movements with absolutely zero lag, making him feel lighter than air. If you think my custom leg parts are amazing, wait till you see my auto balancer. Mei beamed happily. Get back here, you bug basta. And Bakugo raged as spurred his team toward the 10 million plus point headband. CHAAARG. Kirishima roared as he used his INCOMIIING. Minda cried as Bakugo's murderous glare bore into them. Hey, Red. Genki shouted as he whirled on the coming opponents, the auto balancer on his back making that motion too nearly effortless. Come at me, bro, he said, waving his hands around like a mantis. You asked for it, Kirishima cried out moments before Genki threw his right leg up, a wave of oil spilling out of the sole of his shoe and spattering all over him and Bakugo, the feet of his team slipping every which way as their traction was reduced to near zero. You paid attention to the hands when you should have been watching the foot, Genki taunted. Minta, we're leaving, he said as he whirled around, the custom leg parts and auto-balancing making the 180 turn almost instantaneous. Eat it, you dick, Minda cried as he ripped off a dozen of his protrusions and scattered them around Team Bakugo's feet, barring their march forward much to Bakugo's consternation. Motherfucker. Language. Okay, what now? Minta asked as they left Team Bakugo in the dust, the hairs on Genki's body rising as the air around them changed. Incoming. From three sides, Genki called out as Ibara Shizaki, Kyoka Gyro, and Tsuyu Asui closed in on them from all sides with their ranged attacks. AIUGH. Minda cried as he clamped his hands around the 10 million point crown like his life depended on it. Genki whirling to his right, without even looking, his hands snaked out grabbing Kyoka's and Tsuyu's tongue. Ibara's descending on the grand prize the moment his hands became occupied. Before the thorny protrusions could reach it, however, Genki leapt upwards, his jaws clamping shut around the vines as he jerked his head back, drawing them taut as he bit down into them. How? He shouldn't have seen me coming. Kyoka growled as her ears were tugged, a similar sentiment crossing Tsuyu's mind as her oral muscle remained firmly in the oily-haired teen's grasp. Before they could ruminate on this more, however, the color suddenly drained from Ibara's face, the girl letting out a blood-curdling EYAAAGH that practically made her team jump out of their skin. Ibara, what's wrong? Tetsu cried, panic setting in as the normally composed girl completely lost her shit. Make it stop. MAKITSTOP. Ibara cried as broke formation and threw herself to the ground, nearly taking Tetsu with her as she began rolling in the dirt, frantically clutching at her scalp as she wailed. After several shriek-filled seconds, Tetsu barely escaping a disqualification, the vine-haired girl suddenly grasped the roots of the vines that Genki held between clenched teeth, before ripping them out much to the shock of her team and spectators alike. Bastard, what the hell did you do to her? Yosuo raged as the oily-haired teen spat out the now inert vines. Winning this event, that's what, he said before he turned his attention to the one of students at range, scrunching his brow in concentration, causing his most potent oil to spill from the pores in his palms and onto the appendages in his clutches. Jusuke, Sue, what's wrong? Shoji asked as Tsuyu suddenly trembled. Don't, no, tongue, going numb. Tsuyu gurgled as she strained to pull her tongue free, the appendage leaving the teen's oily hand. A meter of pink oral muscle hung limply from the girl's lips once it had been reeled back in. Kyoka, what's wrong? Toru asked as the rocker girl's body suddenly went rigid. SSSSS suo GGG grus. Kyoka stammered with a reddening face as her knees buckled, nearly taking her team along with her too as Genki waggled his fingers, looking around and seeing that the other teams had momentarily halted their assault, likely in response to Ibara's sudden panic attack. The oily-haired teen let Kyoka's earlobes go, her teammates steadying her before she could collapse onto her face. Holy crap, what the hell did you do to them? Minda asked dumbstruck, a little bit of drool leaving his lips as the three girls were left in varying states of distress. No time. We need to move, Genki ordered as they retreated to a sparse area of the field, Mei giggling madly as she launched fat globules of riot foam around the feet of the stunned teams. For the next few minutes, Team Gakaberi was able to remain out of reach of their contemporaries. The first team to step onto Mei's harmless-looking riot foam learned the hard way that, while nowhere near as sticky as Minda's, its adhesive power was quite significant since said stepper almost lost a shoe. With Mei's custom leg parts and auto balancer equipped to the most agile person in the cavalry battle, no one could even come close enough for Minda to worry about using his net launcher, the 10 million point crown remaining tantalizingly out of reach. Oh crap, it's TODOROKIII. Minda cried as the two-toned teen made his way towards them, a long iron pole in his hands as his right half slowly frosted over. Quick, do something before he freezes us all, he cried as Todoroki made to stab the rod into the ground. Goki oil flow, full blast, Genki called out as he squared his feet and thrust out his arms, a small wave of oil flooding out of his feet and his palms onto the ground around them moments before the ice neared them. To everyone's shock except Genki's own, Todoroki's Ice Age-esque attack was actually parted by the puddle of oil Team Gakaberi was situated above. What the heck, was the sum thought of Class 1 as they witnessed this. Whoa, didn't see that coming. Present Mike gawked. That oil, if it's analogous to sweat, the impurities might be what stopped it from freezing over, Izuku thought watching from a distance. He'd seen Minda's quirk firsthand as well, so it was too dangerous to carelessly approach the 10 million point crown. Minda, cover our retreat, Genki said as Mei pushed into his back, her hover boots pushing them over the ice. You got it. Eat my sticky bowels, Minda cried as he began ripping the grape-like protrusions from his scalp and scattering them like caltrops behind them, effectively halting Team Todoroki's advance. Thank God that's over, the diminutive teen sighed as he wiped his brow, a bit of blood dribbling down his temple. Don't relax just yet. We've got 4 more teams moving in on us, Mei pointed out as her caught their course shift. Oh come on, Minda cried as the teams led by Kendo Itsuka, Kodai Yuuei, Hiryu Rin, and Tagaru Kamakiri lunged at them, a fair amount of ire in their eyes for what Genki had done to Ibara. Mei, you ready to do the thing? You bet your buns I am, Mei said with a grin and a thumbs up. All right, let's go, Genki said, diving headlong into the quartet of teams closing in on them in a phalanx. As Genki rushed forward, Mei actually flew back, her equipment from the previous exam doing more than keeping her attached to Genki by a hard line. Genki clearing half the distance between them, he snagged the lines behind himself and drew them forward, Mei accelerating at an arc at an incredible speed and closing the distance much to their shock. Say hello to my little babies, Mei squealed giddily as she flew sidelong towards the 4 teams like the business end of a hammer throw, the girl firing a thick heavy stream of riot foam from her gun at near point-blank range and locking up the 4 teams' feet. Shishida Jiroda and Tsunotori Pony unfortunately enough were left pinned to the ground on all fours. And as the foam expanded to several times its original size when exposed to the open air, the 2 quadrupeds were almost smothered in it. RGH, don't let him get away, Itsuka growled. Hit him with everything you've got. For Ibara, their mobility effectively nullified. The 1B teams retaliated with their ranged attacks instead. Takage Satsuna using her quirk fired out her arms reminiscent of a certain round-nosed pirate. Bondo Kajira released a thick viscous from the holes in his head in a flying wave. Fukadashi Manga used his ability to materialize the onomatopoeia for the word objection in large stylized Japanese characters. Rin Hiryu fired his like an SMG. Tsunotori Pony launched the horns from her head with cannon-like force, a new set regenerating almost instantly. Mei, arrows, Genki said pointing at the ground, Mei's practiced hands disconnecting them in an instant before redirecting her arrows into the ground. Now, cover your ears, he said, thrusting his right arm out, grabbing his wrist. Goki-ai, he intoned as he began burning through energy like a furnace, wisps of steam rising from the corners of his mouth. Oil, he intoned as countless veins began to angrily throb against his skin, his muscles beginning to swell as pressure built. CANNOOON. At the last possible moment, mere moments before the bullet wall of projectiles from the 1B teams could hit them, the pores in his hand suddenly opened up, unleashing a loud boom, as compressed gas laced with secreted chemicals under high pressure shot forward, the resulting recoil throwing him backwards like the force of a bomb. as auto balancer, custom leg parts, and wire arrows alike whined and screamed in protest. Mei wrapped her arms around her meal ticket's torso, heedless of her plentiful bosom pressing into his muscular back. The chemical-saturated blast meeting 1B's attacks partway. There was clearly no contest as the oil caused the wall of glue-like to scatter into fat globules, the compressed air component of the attack causing everything to fly backwards, the 1B teens screaming as they were spattered with a combination of all their own quirks. Holy crap, Minta screamed, while it wasn't even close to the time Bakugo pulled the pin on his grenade-shaped support items. The force behind that attack was still quite substantial. Hey, are you okay? Mei asked, peeking over his shoulder, making no real effort to pull her breasts away from his back as she beheld his arm falling limply to his side, hand convulsing as skin and muscle began to bruise. I'm fine. Can't let them know how much that took out of me, Genki said, hiding the throbbing of his right arm with a confident, toothy smile, the teen rubbing his thumb across his nose as he beheld the havoc he'd sown. So, we managed to fend most everyone off. What now? Mei asked as Genki drew them away from the carnage. Those of a more pragmatic nature taking advantage of the chaos to further their own ends by attacking the defenseless 1B students, mindful of getting trapped in the mountains of. We waste enough of their time to make them realize pursuing us isn't cost-effective, Genki answered. MHA, true to his word, with everything Team Gakabari had going for it, the general consensus was soon spread that it was in fact not cost-effective to pursue them. The more time they spent chasing the golden snitch, the less the teams of lower point values had to secure their own place in the next block, especially since those caught in Mei's expanding riot foam were still trapped, in addition to being spattered with Genki's headband less and less of a target as the support items on his legs gave him incredible acceleration he wouldn't be able to achieve purely on his own. The hero course students pursued one another instead. Most notably was Katsuki Bakugo pursuing Izuku Midoriya, coming up with the inventive strategy of jumping off his own horse before being drawn back in with his teammate. Of course, the real upset came when Nito Monoma snatched away several of 1A's headbands all under their noses. This earned him the ire of Team Bakugo alone, while Team Todoroki attempted to corner Team Midori. However, what Todoroki wouldn't realize was that, with a new common enemy in Gakabari Genki, teaming up with Izuku would in fact deprive him of a significant speed advantage, leaving them at a stalemate as the frizzy-haired teen collected some of the leftovers Genki had left behind on his own rampage. Genki of course hid the throbbing pain of his arm from the use of his clutch move extremely well, and after what felt like an eternity, the cavalry battle finally came to an end. Time Zuyuyuyuyupi. Present Mike screeched, causing Bakugo to fall flat on his face mid-lunge toward Izuku's scrawny neck. Let's see who the top teams are right now, he said as various teams bereft of points wailed in agony. In first place with a guaranteed slot for the final event for holding onto the 10 million point crown, Team Gakabari. Team Gakabari. 10,125. My thighs are chafing, Genki panted, his exhaustion hitting him once the adrenaline died down. In second place, Team Bakugo. Team Bakugo. 1,295. JHHH. Bakugo raged once more. In third place, Team Shinso. Present Mike gawped, sounding quite surprised by the second sudden upset. Team Shinso. 1,170. Thanks for your help, the purple-haired teen said as Ajiro and Nyaranjiki regained consciousness. In fourth place, Team Todoroki. Team Todoroki. 910. Damn, the wielder bit out angrily, now that two general course students stood above him. And in fifth place, Team Midoriya. Team Midoriya. 805. That was too close, Izuku said, bursting with tears. All other teams after him zeroed out after the rampage caused by the second event's first-place team. What a turnabout. Those headbands went every which way. Present Mike squealed excitedly. Quite, Aizawa hummed. And with that, these 5 teams will now proceed to the final event. All right, folks, we'll proceed to the afternoon portion of the sports festival after a 1-hour lunch break. See you then, Present Mike announced, countless heroes and civilians alike beginning to leave some seats. Hey, Eraserhead, wanna grab some food? He said moments before the mic cut out. What the hell happened to us? How'd we end up with 0 points? Tetsu wailed in shock. It must have been in the chaos left in Gakabari's wake. Ibara spoke up, shuddering as she nursed the bald spot on the right side of her head. We were so focused on his headband we must have gotten tunnel vision. Ibara, are you going to be okay? Itsuka asked worriedly. Yes, I'll be fine. I just need a little water and sunlight. The modest girl sighed. I let the fact that he was from the general course make me arrogant, so maybe this is divine punishment. But what happened back there? Setsuna asked. You sounded like you were in so much pain. I don't know. It's like When he wrapped his teeth around my vines, it felt like I was being melted alive, Ibarra said, casting a scared glance towards the oily-haired teen off to the side. To think someone like that was hidden away in the general course, Monoma moaned, lamenting his own failings in the previous event. Part of me is ecstatic watching him pull the rug out from under one so many times and making utter fools of them. But when it happens to our class, I have mixed feelings. Elsewhere, Wanna exchanged their own thoughts on the previous event. This sucks, but congrats all the same. Mina, Tsuyu hummed, fuming that her own headband had been taken without her knowledge. Bakugo only picked me because I could melt Todoroki's ice. This win didn't really say anything about my strength, Mina said with a very meh attitude. Man, what happened at the beginning was way too close. Ochako sighed, recalling the first minute of the cavalry battle where they almost flung themselves into the spectators' stand. My apologies. I was not aware enough of our adversary's abilities to anticipate the use of an oil slick of all things. Ida apologized. Such a tactic had almost cost his brother his life early on in his career, so he should have had the presence of mind to avoid such a trick. And no, it's my fault. I saw him trip Kaken right before we started gathering teams together. And I was so fixated on trying to ascertain the nature of his quirk, I neglected to mention it until we'd already fallen into his trap, Midoriya apologized. Clever is the falcon that hides its claws, Takoyami said cryptically as he cast a glance toward the two-time first-place winner. And it was true. No one in the hero course so much as knew about someone like Genki, or Shinso for that matter. Yet these two general course students continued to succeed where others failed, one remaining under the radar while the other was smack dab in the middle like a neon light. That fucking bug. Bakugo raged. He couldn't tell what was worse, having someone from the general course beat him, again, or having Minta of all people beat him, either directly or indirectly not mattering. Ugh, I've still got this crap in my hair, Kirishima grumbled. In the next round, I'll fucking kill him. The explosive teen raged. As the students of Class 1 and 1B lamented their losses, Shoto looked Izuku dead in the eye. The two's gaze held for several moments before he jerked his thumb behind himself, prompting the green-haired teen to follow. MHA. We're alive. We're really alive. Minta whimpered as his grip finally slackened, and he fell to the ground in a tired heap. The heck are you tired for? I did all the running, Genki rebutted. Hey, half the time I couldn't hold on any longer, but I was too scared to let go. Cut me some slack, alright. Moving on. May, I don't know if I've said this enough, but these support items you made are amazing. He complimented, Minta groaning at the pun while the inventor happily beamed at the praise. If I make into the hero course, you have got to help me upgrade my costume. As long as you tell everyone the gear is a Hatsume original, I'll consider it, she said, helping him out of her gear. And besides, having someone so interested in my tech means I'll always have someone willing to field test my babies, she giggled, giving her own boots and foam gun an appreciative pat, ideas ruminating in her head to turn her riot foam sprayer into some kind of Machai gun after seeing Minta's quirk in action. Thanks for the help, Mr. First Place. A pleasure doing business with ya, the support course girl said giddily as she walked away, humming a merry tune as she went. Hey man, in case I forget to say it later, thanks for getting me through all that, Minta sighed. Hey, I should be thanking you. If you hadn't agreed to partner up on me and give me the down low on your class quirks, I would have been up shit creek without a paddle. Knowing's half the battle. Still, we were lucky that crazy chick decided to team up with us and loan out all that cool stuff, Minta said, giving the pink-haired girl a look before remembering the one rule. Don't stick your dick in crazy. So, wanna go grab some lunch? No homo. Sure. Yuuei. Hey, what do you stop for? Minta asked as his teammate froze mid-sentence, his antennae shooting straight up as his eyes began to dart around nervously. My baby BOOOYYYY. A womanly voice cried happily from one of the tunnel entrances, all eyes on the ground on them as Genki was suddenly scooped up and swung around like a ragdoll. Aka-san, when'd you get here? Genki gawped. That's your mom. Minta gawped, the eyes of several of his peers looking on in curiosity as Genki was peppered with kisses by the sudden arrival. Genki's mother looked very much like him, and it was obvious where he got his looks from at a glance, albeit her genes were obviously diluted since Genki's mother was markedly more feminine than her son and had yellow eyes instead of brown. Her shoulder-length hair, which was colored blonde, had only a slight oily sheen to it, styled up in twin ponytails with foot-long antennae similar to her son's own sticking out atop her head. Her attire consisted of a black pantsuit and red tie, largely conservative aside from the small swell of her bust and hips, though she could be mistaken for a schoolgirl from her youthful appearance. Being an inch or two shorter than her son with flawless skin and youthful demeanor, she was actually in her early 40s. Oh, I'm so proud of Yuuei. The woman cooed as she hugged her son, swinging him around like he were weightless, a lance of pain shooting up his arm and causing him to wince. The woman immediately stopped, setting him on his feet and giving him a once-over. You really pushed yourself to get this far, didn't you? she asked, a look mixed between worry and pride on her face. I had to, Mom. Plus ultra style. As cheesy as that sounds to say out loud, Genki admitted. Well, at least you take more after your father under the hood, the woman admitted, drumming her knuckles on his chest. Minta-kun, right. Why yes ma'am, Minta answered as the woman turned to him. Could you take my son over to Recovery Girl? I'll get a nice meal for the two of you by the time you get there. 3 if I can find that nice girl from the support course, she hummed thoughtfully as she walked off. So, that's your mom, huh? Minta hummed. If you say she's a MILF, no one will ever find the body, Genki growled lowly, an angry hiss rising out of clenched teeth. And not even remotely what I was going to say. I like my women tall, busty, and curvy. You pig. I can't believe you just said that. Get kicked by a horse and die. Several of the nearby girls chided. I regret nothing, Minta proclaimed. What the hell have I done? Genki wondered, realizing just who he'd taken with him to the battle tournament stage of the sports festival. He could only hope his other partner would show a little more restraint. MHA. As it turned out, Shuzenji Chiyo, Aka Recover Girl, had been quite busy after the obstacle course race had been concluded. In addition to the dozens of cases of first and even second-degree frostbite caused by Todoroki at the very beginning, multiple students had also been injured attempting to surmount the Robo Inferno. While the fall did have adequate padding and safety nets, there were still a few injuries from those who fell partway though, but at least no one died. As for the minefield, there had been a bit of hearing damage in addition to the bruising and spraining for those that had triggered the mines, and of course, the embarrassing requirement of fresh pants when blue changed to brown and maybe even yellow. It was of course, as the last of the students from the obstacle course race had received their treatment, that the most injured from the cavalry battle needing care arrived in her office, a storage room down one of the maintenance corridors labeled Recovery Girl's temporary nurse's office. No rest for the wicked, I suppose, the woman hummed as she beheld the general course student in front of her, blinking her eyes as she saw her face. Jen-chan, is that you? She asked, adjusting her visor. You've gotten so big since I last saw you. Wait, you know her? Minta asked. A while back I was in an accident, and Recovery Girl saved me from spending a year in a full body cast, Genki said nervously. What, did you really do that badly in the entrance exam? Minta asked. No, that was for something different, but patient confidentiality means I'm not at liberty to say any more, Recovery Girl replied. So, what seems to be ailing ya? She asked, getting straight to business since he was on a time crunch. I kinda elevated my body temperature so I could eject oil and hot air under high pressure, so my arm's a bit sore, Genki said, rolling up his sleeve. I see. The woman hummed as her visor scanned the appendage, evaluating his condition. Well, if you'll just fill out this form and take a seat, we'll get you squared away in time for your next hurdle. You know about that? Genki asked as he sat on the nearby bed. Of course, dearie. Do you think I'd really let something like the sports festival happen without knowing what's going on? She asked, gesturing to an old TV in the back of the room. I suppose not, he said, taking the clipboard. Grabbing the attached pen, his arm winced, the teen handily changing the pen over to his left hand and getting to work. Ambidextrous, are you? That's a rare trait. Even with 80% of the populace having quirks, Recovery Girl hummed as the oily-haired teen crossed the T's and dotted the S's. Well, you know, having ganglion all over my body comes with its advantages, Genki admitted, filling out the last of the form. That is true, Recovery Girl admitted. You know, even if your father's been retired for a while, I'm sure he still has enough pull around here he could have gotten you into the hero course on recommendation, she stated, causing Minta to sputter since the only people he knew of that got in on recommendation were from elite families. Maybe, but part of me had this stupid macho thing going where I wanted to get into Yuuei on my own merits. That if I couldn't get in on my own, I didn't really deserve to be here, Genki admitted as he rubbed the back of his head. Also, He paused, his face drooping. I didn't want my father to possibly find out he'd been a has-been for too long to get me into Yuuei just on his word alone. Thwack. I. Genki cried as the woman struck him with her cane. Try to give us non-mutants a little more credit than that, Recover Girl scolded. We do know how to express gratitude, even to those that wouldn't pass for human in the pre-paranormality age. I'm sorry, you're right, Genki admitted. I didn't want everyone to think I only got in because of institutionalized nepotism or something like that. I didn't think you youngs cared for 6-syllable words like that. Yes, well, if the hero thing doesn't work out for me, I can still go into the new family business if things don't pan out, Genki admitted. Don't sell yourself so short just yet. You've done a heck of a good job making it so far. Most years it's only hero and support course students that make it past the first round, so it's actually quite refreshing to see the general course get some representation, Recovery Girl said with a smile. Of course, you can't go out there roughed up like that, now can you? Extending her lips and pressing them to the oily-haired teen's forehead with a chew, Genki's right arm emitted a green, almost magical glow as the bruising and swollen veins began to disappear, leaving only unmarred skin in their wake. Woo, got a little dizzy all of a sudden, Genki said, swaggering. Don't remember that happening last time. Well, you were practically dead to the world and on an IV drip the entire time. It's understandable you don't really remember, Recovery Girl hummed. Here, take some candy. It'll give you energy, she said, pointing to a jar on the counter. Arigato. Genki bowed, taking a handful of candy and popping the sugary treats into his mouth, feeling his energy slowly return as he broke them up between his teeth and swallowing the remains. Well, if there isn't anything else you need here, make sure you get a nice filling meal before you do anything else. Wouldn't want you eating away at yourself, now would we? No, ma'am. Thank you for everything, he said, bowing slightly. It's my pleasure. Run along now, your adoring public awaits. Yeah, for as long as they don't know what my quirk is, Genki said sadly. Give your peers a little more credit than that, too. This isn't middle school anymore. Your future classmates are a bit more mature than that. You say that like I'm a shoo-in to get in. Call it a woman's intuition, Recovery Girl said with a smile. Run along now, or you'll miss your cue. Arigato gozaimasu. Genki bowed again as he rushed out of the room, tucking Minta under his arm as he went. So, what the heck happened to you that you would have been in a full body cast for a year without Recovery Girl? Minta found himself asking. I don't like to talk about it. Fair enough, MHA. Leaving the tunnels and stepping out into the festival grounds surrounding the arena, meeting back up with his mother who'd somehow managed to track down Mei. The mother, son, and his teammates all went out towards the food stalls, the scents of cookers and fryers filling the air. After a few moments, to Genki's surprise, passerby actually started smiling at him, congratulating him on his victories, patting him on the back, giving him their well wishes and even stepping out of the way for him. This kind of adulation was something completely foreign to the bug-like teen, since everyone tended to shy away from him once they learned what his quirk was and the negative connotations that came with it. Hehehe, looks like you've got some fans, Genki's mother, introduced as Gakaberi Oki, giggled with a wide smile on her face. Maybe, but for how long? He asked before his mother tugged on his cheek. Itai. Don't sell yourself short, his mother chided as she patted his cheek. You've got the best of both worlds, the strength of your Adu-san and the eye-catching looks of your Aka-san, she said with a beaming smile. You'll make a great hero, so don't give up before it's even begun. I guess you're right, Genki admitted. So, your dad used to be a pro hero, then? Minta asked. Yeah, there was an incident a while back, and he retired shortly after, Genki answered, his expression souring for a moment. Thankfully, he made some connections during his live-action movie debut from early on in his hero career, so he was able to find a good job after that. Oh, what movie? They asked. The live-action Terraformers remake from a while back, Oki said with a smile. Your father was so dashing on the big screen, she sighed wistfully. Well, he had to be. They copy and pasted him all over the place. It was kinda creepy actually. Not the point, Oki chided. So, she said, turning to his teammates. What are you in the mood for? If you're hitting the battle tournament next, you're going to need your energy. Well, if you're paying, I guess I'll take some teriyaki chicken, Minta answered. A heaping helping of yakisoba for me, please, Mei said excitedly. But what'll you eat? Heaping helpings of everything, the woman said with a smile as she held up an impressive stack of bento boxes. You're free to have some if you want. It's kinda weird I didn't notice that until just now, Minta hummed. Yeah, I don't know how she does that either, Genki added. The most I ever got out of her is mom power. And that's all you will get out of me, Oki said with a grin. MHA. As it turned out, winning the first two events of the sports festival despite being an underdog, or rather, because he was an underdog, came with some nice fringe benefits. Not only did the vendors they visited give them extra big helpings for no additional charge, but the stands they didn't even plan on going to gave them lots of free samples. Even if it was only for the social media exposure, it was still a touching gesture, and after all the running he'd done and all the oil he'd secreted, the teen was more hungry than he'd realized. Plus, it'd just be rude to turn away free food. While Mei ate happily from both the festival food and bento boxes Genki's mother had brought with her, Minta and those nearby could only gape in shock as Genki and his mother alike wolfed down many servings of food. Not even the barest hint of distension in sight as piles of food disappeared into their gullets. Even those with larger body types couldn't help but gawk as the two Gakaberi put away plate after plate of food. Even classes 1 and 1B had their momentary animosity for being unable to get the 10 million plus point crown abate as they beheld the sight of the two bug-like people eating with various expressions on their face. Some didn't care, some looked on with awe, some found themselves losing their appetite, and others, well, one other, scribbled furiously in his notebook like he were attempting to solve a riveting game of Clue. Only, instead of trying to figure out who killed whom with what and where, it was what kind of mutant-type quirk the two had, and what facets of it came from the mother, which came from the father, and which were spontaneous mutations exclusive to their offspring. Food preferences were just another clue he was trying to use to extrapolate the information he sought, since one's quirk did tend to influence their diet. Eventually, however, the hour-long lull came to an end, and the Yuuei Sports Festival's final event began in earnest. Lunch break is now over. Before we get to the final event, I've got good news for all of those out of the running. President Mike announced as students and spectators alike began to pour back into the arena. This is still a sports festival, so we've prepared a recreational activity for all participants. We've even shipped in cheerleaders from America to get you pumped up. What's this? What are they doing? Aizawa mumbled as students and spectators alike turned to the female students of Class 1A, now clad in matching uniforms and pom-poms to the cheerleaders, just with none of the pep. In fact, most of them looked like they'd swallowed a lemon. Minta, Kaminari. You tricked us, Momo raged, face flushed in embarrassment as the others hung their heads. All the girls have to be part of the cheer squad after lunch. Like them, over there. No one told us about that. Don't trust me. Whatever. Your loss. Aizawa-sensei told us about it himself. How'd I let myself get fooled by Minta's stupid prank? Momo wailed. Those idiots. Kyoka growled in embarrassment as she threw her pom-poms down. Still time before the main event. No sense in sitting around. Why not just go with it? It could be fun. Toru giggled as she pumped her pom-poms enthusiastically. You're enjoying this, Toru. Tsuyu commented as the invisible girl pumped in enough pep for the 6 of them. Hope everyone enjoys this little recreational competition. Once that's over, we're on to the final event. Between the 17 members of the 5 winning teams, we'll have a formal tournament, a thrilling series of one-on-one battles. A tournament, so we'll be up in that ring I see on TV every year, Kirishima said, sufficiently pumped up. Was it a tournament last year too? Mina asked. The format's always different, but most years involve some kind of head-to-head competition, Zero nodded. The matchups will be decided by drawing lots. Once that's settled, we'll move on to the festivities and then the tournament itself, Midnight announced, holding up a box with the word lots slapped across the front. It's up to each of you finalists to decide whether or not you participate in the fun. I expect some of you would rather take a breather and save your strength. Now, let's start with the first place team. Excuse me, Anjiro announced, raising up his hand. I'd like to drop out, he confessed, much to his peers' wide-eyed shock. Anjiro, why? This is your chance to get noticed by the pros, his classmates exclaimed in shock. The cavalry battle. I have no memories of anything that happened up until the tail end. It's probably his quirk that did it, the user confessed to his friends. That's right, Anjiro was teamed up with that guy, Genki thought as he turned his eyes to his fellow general course student. The indigo-haired teen shifting his head as the green-haired teen from Wana tried to meet his gaze. I know this is a great opportunity. I know how stupid it must seem to throw it all away. But, this final tournament, everyone else made it here by their own strength. Yet I'm standing here and I don't even know why, Ajiro said, clenching his fist. I can't accept that. You're thinking about it too hard. Just show what you're made of in the tournament. Toru spoke up. Yeah, by that logic, I shouldn't really be here either, Mina confessed. Though, I'm talking about my pride here. I don't think it's right, the teen said, shaking as he palmed his face. Also, why the heck are you girls dressed like that anyway? He said, turning away, unsure where to look. I can't remember anything either. I want to withdraw too. Nairanjiki Shota spoke up. This is a contest of skill. Letting someone who didn't do anything advance. Doesn't it defeat the whole point of the sports festival? Isn't it even against the rules? These guys, so manly, Kirishima awed. We have a strange turn of events. What will the coordinator, Midnight, decide? President Mike wondered. How naive and green. I like it, Midnight said with manic glee as she cracked her whip through the air. Anjiro and Shota have officially withdrawn. She liked it, was the sum thoughts of most of the competitors. Replacing those two will be members of Team Kendo. Because reasons. Genki could have sworn he heard her mutter. If it's gonna be like that, shouldn't it be them instead? I mean, we were immobilized practically the whole time, Itsuka stated as she turned her head. They were giving it their all to keep what they had until the very end. Team Tetsu. I mean, she went on to say, causing said team to look up in surprise. Don't worry, we're not colluding or anything. This just feels right. Why, you guys, Tetsu bawled, crying manly tears. Tetsu's team in turn selected their representatives, putting their strongest feet forward. So be it. Tetsu and Shizaki bring us back up to 17 competitors, Midnight announced. However, because of the odd number of students competing in the finals this year, one of you will have to fight one time extra. So, who's it going to be? Midnight asked, holding up a different ballot box, a masochistic look in her eyes. The 17 finalists walking up to Midnight one after the next. Taking hold of folded sheets of paper from the box, all at once the gathered students opened them. All of them were greeted by blank pieces of paper. Sans one. You've got to be kidding me. Genki grumbled as a big red dot stared up at him. all eyes falling on E, who would potentially have to fight 4 times to get to the finals to everyone else's hypothetical 3. Alright, now that that's out of the way, it's time for everyone to draw their ballots, Midnight announced, holding up the original lots box. The gathered students drawing their lots. Midnight compiled the results, the jumbo screen behind her showing a 4-stage tournament bracket accommodating 17 competitors, all lines of which lead up to a golden crown featuring the Yuuei insignia, a large U with an imposed in the middle. And here are the matchups. The blank slots on the 17-branched root-like bracket. Opening the tournament up was Midoriya v Shinso. If I win my first match, my second's against Todoroki, Izuku realized, seeing the Todoroki v Zero placard in the next match after his. What he'd discussed with Shoto just after the cavalry battle ended fresh in his mind. Shinso, that's gotta be. Midoriya. Izuku, that's you, right? The indigo-haired Shinso asked as he came up behind Izuku, causing the green-haired teen to straighten. It's him, Izuku gaped, remembering whom the glassy-eyed Ajiro had teamed up with in the last round. Before he could speak up, however, to his and Ajiro's surprise both, it was the hand of Genki that clamped over his mouth, stopping him from answering. Itoshi, the oily-haired teen hummed. Genki, the indigo-haired teen returned. Can I have a word with you? He stated, jerking a thumb over his shoulder. Midoriya could only look on in confusion as the indigo-haired teen was led away. Midoriya, Ajiro called, getting his attention. That guy, don't answer him. Sooner than expected, then, Todoroki mused, writing off his first battle from the get-go. Bring your best, Midoriya. I'm taking you down. While he did want to bring down Gakabari Genki as well, the oily-haired teen was in a completely separate tournament block from him, and the soonest they'd be able to meet would be in the final match, if that. As the Hero Corps students became acquainted with their own opponents, some's reactions different than others, Hitoshi and Genki regarded one another, eyes of indigo meeting eyes of brown. The 2 General Corps students held a stern gaze for several seconds, but ultimately it was Genki who spoke first. Congrats on making it this far. Thanks, though it was only natural you'd make it this far. You paint a big enough target on your back. So, I see you got a little chatty with the competition before the cavalry battle, he said, glancing at Ajiro and Nairanjiki. These Hero Corps kids are so full of themselves. They made it almost too easy, the wielder of chuckled. Plus, you kicked up so much dust, no one even noticed me slink on through to the final event. I won't criticize you for your methods. I'm not much different, Genki admitted as he glanced at Mainta. All I'll say is, good luck, he said, holding out his hand. The indigo-haired teen regarding the oily-haired teen's hand before grasping it, giving it a firm shake. Good luck to you too. May the best man win. Trust me, I intend to give it my best shot, Genki said with a grin. You know, you're the only person who can talk so fluidly with me. Hitoshi marveled. That's a really good quirk you have, making you immune to guys like me. More like a resistance. Nothing about my quirk gives me full-on immunity, Genki corrected. Watch out for that kid's right hook, he said, jerking his thumb at Midoriya. Whatever quirk he has, it's not joke. Oh, don't worry, I know exactly how to get under the skin of self-righteous guys like that, Shinso said with a self-assured grin. I don't doubt that, Genki said, looking up at the tournament bracket. Before he could even make it to the preliminary round proper, he would first have to fight his partner from the cavalry battle, Minoru Mainta, the winner of which would go on to face Ishido Mina, the wielder of. After that came either Takoyami Fumikage or Yaoyorozu Momo. And after that, whoever managed to come out on top between Uraraka, Bakugo, Tetsu, or Kirishima. Alright, now that we've set aside the tournament for the time being, let's get on with the thrill-a-minute festivities. Present Mike announced loudly. MHA. During the events that followed, while those that fell short during the cavalry battle took part in the supplementary events, those in the final competition prepared in their own ways. Midoriya steeled himself after learning what he could of Shinso's quirk. Takoyami meditated up in a tree. Hit a guzzled can after can of his premium fuel, Bakugo and Todoroki brooded. Mainta, Zero, Kaminari, and Ibara all competed in the scavenger hunt, while the girls of Wanna cheered their friends on, sans Momo and Kyoka who lacked their friends' enthusiasm. While Shinso was off resting, planning his future verbal assaults. Now that his mother had arrived, Genki had her make some alterations to his PE uniform, exposing his legs from above the knee down, and doing away with the sleeves entirely to let his skin breathe. Suffice it to say, some relaxed, others dealt with it differently. Before they all knew it, their brief reprieve had finally come to an end. Thanks, Cementos. Present Mike crooned as the blocky hero bent liquid cement into an immaculate tournament stage, even going as far as to incorporate torches into the 4 corners of the pedestal. Hey guys, are you ready? You've been through hell to get here, but now it's time for the one-on-one tournament. You've got only yourself to rely on, even if you're not a hero. This saying holds true. You know it. Spirit, technique, strength, wisdom, and knowledge. Use them all and show us your best. In the preliminary round before the quarterfinals, from first to last, The 8 individual matches were, and at the very end was, the winner of which would go on to fight Mina. An upset from previous years where only Hero Course students received any sort of representation in the final event was the presence of the 2 General Course Dark Horses, Gakabari Genki and Shinso Hitoshi, as well as the Support Course student Hatsune Mei. This, in addition to the villain attack at the USJ and Class 1A's involvement with said altercation, meant that the first-year sports festival would receive as much viewership, if not more than, the third-year sports festival that commonly dominated aforementioned viewership. Whether it was intentional or not, the first fight of the preliminary round featuring a General Course student guaranteed it that the 2 fighters would have everyone's undivided attention. MHA. The first match, making a weird face despite his excellent performance. It's Midoriya Izuku from the Hero Course versus, sorry, but this guy hasn't really done anything to stand out yet. It's Shinso Hitoshi from the General Course. Present Mic announced as the 2 stepped onto their stage, Midoriya looking like he had something impossibly heavy weighing on his mind, while Hitoshi had a lackluster, almost half-asleep expression on his face. The rules are simple. Win by knocking your opponent out of the ring, immobilizing them, or getting them to say I give up. Bring the pain. We've got our good old recovery girl on standby. And fight dirty if you must. Ethics, never heard of them. And of course, going for the kill is a no-no. You'll be disqualified, because a true hero's fists fly only when in pursuit of villains. He said as Cementos bent a throne of cement for himself. I give up, huh? Shinso asked. Get it, Midoriya? This battle's going to test your strength of will. If you've got any kind of vision for your future, there's no sense in worrying about how you got here. Now, let's get this thing started. Like that monkey babbling about his stupid pride. READYYYYYYYYYY. Present Mic announced. Izuku's face contorted into a cringe-inducing WTF. Start. What kind of dumbass throws away a chance like this? Shinso went on to say, egging Izuku on more and more. What do you say? Before Izuku could bridge the gap between them and knock out Shinso's lights out, however, his body suddenly froze, Genki finding himself face-palming in the stands next to his mother. That idiot. The oily-haired teen groaned, wondering how the guy who got second place in the obstacle course race without even using his quirk let himself be egged on like that. Must not have been his smarts if he fell for something so transparent. Jin-chan, can't he just shrug it off like you did when you first met him? Oki questioned, thinking about the story her son had told her after his first week at Yuuei while Present Mic gave the play-by-play. When Genki and Hitoshi had first met, they'd had a small altercation that caused Hitoshi to let loose his quirk. However, much to the indigo-haired teen's shock, Genki was able to break the after a few seconds with only a shake of his head and a clap to his cheeks. Worked just fine on everyone else, even the second-year students that had tried to bully them out of the money in their wallets. But the indigo-haired teen could never get it to work on Genki. Or at least, not for very long. It's not that easy, Genki said, shaking his head. Shinso's quirk might seem magical, but it has very clear limits. Shinso can only use his quirk on one person at a time. He can't make anyone do anything that requires speech or thought, and a sufficiently strong jolt or shock will snap a person right out of it. Of course, the thing that gives me resistance to is that his and my nervous systems are fundamentally different. Shinso's body has a centralized nervous system, whereas mine is the exact opposite, a side effect of our mutant-type anatomy. So basically, since your thoughts aren't all gathered in one place, it's like your brain is password protected. More like we're running on incompatible operating systems. Genki hummed. From what I remember, felt like a thin mist I could easily shake off. For someone with a centralized nervous system. Based on what I felt, I imagine to anyone else it's like their heads filled with a thick, inescapable fog. That or pea soup, if I'm using the expression right. So then Midoriya is toast then? Well, Genki hummed as Izuku neared the edge of the ring. The fat lady isn't singing just yet. FWOOOSH. A blast of air suddenly kicked up from the arena, the toe of Izuku's left foot mere centimeters from the out-of-bounds line. The green-haired teen panted heavily as he took a step back, wide eyes going to Shinso as he realized how close he'd come to losing. What's this? Midoriya stopped himself, at the last possible moment. Present Mic gawped. So, Midoriya used his quirk to hurt himself enough to shake it off. Genki hummed as he squinted his eyes, spying Midoriya's bruised and battered fingers. From that point on, the tone of the fight shifted radically. While at the beginning, Shinso's laid-back barbs had been enough to put Izuku under his spell, now his taunting was frantic, almost desperate, as he attempted to the green-haired teen once again. Izuku trying to push him out of the ring, Shinso was able to hit his opponent with a wicked right hook to the face, and even went so far as to turn them around so it was Izuku's back to the abyss. However, before he could lose any more ground, Izuku pulled off a stunning over-the-shoulder throw, a loud wham sounding as Shinso's back met the ground, his heels going out of bounds. Shinso is out of the ring. Midoriya moves on to the second round. Midnight announced, Izuku's eyes going wide as the adrenaline rush died. The teen winced from both his busted-up fingers and his bloodied nose. Goodness gracious, we're off to an uneventful start, Present Mike said, his disappointment at the lack of panache palpable. Well, put your hands together for our fierce competitors, he announced, feeling like the guy trying to start a car with a dying battery. So, he lost. Oki hummed. Yeah, but he came really close. Genki sighed. Even though they'd only known one another for a few weeks, he and Hitoshi had become really good friends. Even though Hitoshi's quirk was perceived as being villainous and his own being considered filthy, after their initial altercation, the two had found common ground in that they both wanted to overcome the societal stigmas leveled against them and become great heroes. Yet neither of their quirks repulsed the other due to lacking the ego to care about such a minor detail. Had they met in middle school, the two could have been like brothers. Still, Genki couldn't help but smile as the students from the general course and pro heroes alike showered him with adulation, either directly or indirectly. I feel like Shinso has a real shot at this, even if he can't take that shot right now. Aren't you going to cheer him up? His mom asked. Nah, it'd be too weird if I said anything. Shinso had to get this far while staying under the radar, but I had to slap a neon sign across my back and literally make everyone eat my dust, Genki said, shaking his head. It might feel like a slap across the face if I try to console him too soon. MHA. The wait is over, Present Mike announced after the field was vacated and the cleaning drone sandblasted the small blood spatter away. The cream of the crop, yet this guy's somehow still as plain as they come. Zero Hanta of the hero course versus the best of the best, the strongest of the strong in 1A. Todoroki Shoto. I don't really feel much like winning, Zero said, cracking his neck. Second match. Start. The moment the match started, Zero's demeanor pulled a 180, the teen snapping out his arms like a gunshot and constricting the strongest of the strong in 1 around the arms and legs. But I don't feel like losing either, he said as he twisted himself around, attempting an instantaneous out of bound before his stronger opponent could retaliate. Incoming. Genki and Oki both cried, throwing themselves to the ground the moment they felt the air pressure dropping like a lead weight. An enormous glacier of ice shooting up nearly double as tall as the stadium itself a moment later. Students, pro heroes, and faculty alike could only gape at the massive ice formation that had sprouted from the arena. Zero's half-frozen body a pinprick against the mountain of ice that had been suddenly called forth. The 2 torches over his shoulders summarily extinguished from the sudden cold front. Zero, can you move? Midnight asked from the referee's stand, the right side of her body covered in ice. Why, you're KK kidding, right? Oh. Zero is immobilized. You're going up against that. Genki's mother gawped as Todoroki began melting the enormous berg, turning the spectator stands immediately under it into a bit of a splash zone. Geez, Yuki-chan's quirk is no joke, she said, looking up at the giant ice wall looming overhead. Yeah, I guess I am, Genki answered, wondering if he stood any sort of chance against a high-end quirk like. Todoroki moves on to the second round. MHA. With the arena all thought out, it's time for the next match, Present Mike announced a few minutes later, several spectators in sopping wet clothing suffering in silence while those of the aquatic or even amphibious nature appreciated the unexpected accommodation. It's Class B's own assassin. Every rose has its thorns, right? It's Shizaki Ibara versus the sparking killer boy Kaminari Denki. Pardon my objection, but what exactly did you mean by assassin? The vine-haired girl asked worriedly. I have merely come this far seeking victory, not to take my opponent's life. Ibara's spiel going on for several more minutes, the girl knowingly or unknowing sufficiently cowing Present Mike and even leaving him speechless, a feat unto itself. Genki's mother couldn't help but nudge her son in the ribs. Hehehe. Who knew hair pulling was your kink, she said, pointing to the almost bald spot on the girl's head. Alka-san. Genki whined as spectators nearby gave him weird looks, a momentary blast of light causing him to blink his eyes. In case you didn't hear me, it's already over. What the? I blinked and I missed everything. Genki gawped. One moment Ibara and Denki had been standing across from one another, the prior yakety-yak-yakking about hero philosophy and platitudes. The next, the wielder of was strung up by an entire forest of vines, while Ibara stood behind a wall of vines separating them, hands clasped like an angel. Shizaki advances to the second round. No, seriously, what did I miss? Genki gawped while his mother giggled. MHA. Moving on. Who's next in the battle for the top? Present Mike asked after the shortest fight in the history of Yuuei Sports Festival fights. The first round's just about half over. Next up is Ida Tenya of the hero course versus, covered head to toe in support items, the girl that Gakabari Genki's sled dog ran to victory. Hatsume of the support course. Hey Gen-chan, isn't that all the stuff you were wearing? Oki questioned, observing the gear that the younger brother of Ingenium was decked out in. Yeah, but why would me? Genki asked before realizing how many cameras, social media screencasters, and sponsors were scattered all about. clever girl, the oily-haired teen then said with a grin. Even though he only met the girl a couple hours ago, he knew exactly what was going through the manic engineer's head. From a purely economic standpoint, it made a ton of sense. Aren't those forbidden for Hero Course students? You have to put in a special request for those things beforehand. Oh, I forgot. I didn't think it'd be a problem, seeing as how Aoyama wears that belt of his. Ada confessed. Right, he applied for an exception, Midnight explained. I'm terribly sorry then. Except, I was so touched by my opponent's sense of sportsmanship, he said with a bow. Although she's a member of the support course, she came to me and said if we're to be seen as equals, then we should fight on equal footing. She gave me these items to use. Her earnest spirit, I could never look down on it. That was my thinking, Ada proclaimed boldly for all the world to hear, his hand upon his chest as though he were reciting Shakespeare. So naive, Genki thought, facial muscles twitching as he tried not to bust out laughing the moment Midnight allowed it. Well, at least Miri-chan loves the new job, Oki giggled. Fourth match, start, Midnight called out, Ada breaking out into a sprint towards her. What incredible speed, huh, Ada-kun? May suddenly spoke into a microphone. The speakers scattered across her harness amplifying her voice so even those in the nosebleed section could hear her. Oh, I am so glad I recorded this, Genki said with a grin as he rested his phone on the banister in front of his seat, recording this for posterity. Your legs feel even lighter than usual, do they not? They asked. That's what you can expect from my custom leg parts, which keep up with their users' speed and amplify it. Something Gakabari Genki knows all too well from our landslide victory in the cavalry battle. The next moment a hydraulic bar shot out of the bottom of May's backpack, stabbing into the ground and thrusting the girl sidelong before a perpendicular bar came out, suspending the girl in mid-air as Ada tripped. However, dodging is no problem with my hydraulic attachment bars, the girl said as her eyes drifted into the nosebleed section. Ada's back-mounted support equipment letting out gusts of air and helping him regain his balance faster and better than he could have on his own. What deft maneuvering, Ada. My auto-balancer makes the impossible movements possible. The ensuing game of tag, complete with play-by-play sales pitch, went on for another 10 minutes, the pink-haired girl showing off an impossibly large amount of support items at Ada's expense, until finally, phew, I believe they've seen it all now, May said with a self-satisfied look on her face. There's nothing left to show. You deceived me. Ada cried as the glowing girl wiped the glow from her brow. Hatsum is out of the ring. Ada moves on to the second round. Sorry for using you like that. Ha 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 ha. May said robotically, giggling as Ada cried. I really dislike Yaowu. The younger brother of Ingenium wailed at being used. Well, you know what they say about suckers. Genki hummed, his mother laughing her ass off in a very unladylike manner. MHA. For the fifth matchup of the first round. A celebrity since his middle school days with a face only a mother could love. It's Bakugo Katsuki of the Hero Course versus my personal pick, a bubbly energetic girl, Uraraka Ochako, also of the Hero Course. Present Mike announced as Beauty and the Beast squared off. You're the floaty one, right, round face? Bakugo asked. If you're gonna back down, do it now. Q's crying uncle later won't cut it. As Ochako's brow twitched at the unflattering nickname, Genki couldn't help but think puberty must have hit that guy like a truck, because his voice was insanely deep for a 15-year-old. Fifth match, start. The moment the fight began, Ochako ran in low, Genki realizing the girl was trying to get a TKO right off the bat. However, Bakugo wouldn't have any of it as he repelled the girl with an explosion from his hand, sending the adorable cinnamon roll skidding backwards. Seeing the outline of the girl's sleeve, Bakugo drove his opponent into the ground, only to find empty cloth as Ochako used the smokescreen to try and flank him. However, Bakugo once again sent her backwards, this time kicking up debris. However, Ochako wasted no time, charging back in, only to get blasted by the teen's quirk again, and again, and again, and again. Thick clouds of acrid black smoke belched into the air, furrows drawn into the arena as both fighter and debris were tossed around. After a while it got painful to even watch. But despite it all, Ochako held strong. She may have been soft and round, maybe even downright adorable, but this girl had freaking adamantium in her spine if she could get up after all this punishment. However, it wasn't long before a pro hero became more vocal about the proceedings. Hey, that's not the way someone who wants to be a hero acts. If you're so much stronger than her, just throw her out of the ring and finish it. Stop toying with the poor girl. Yeah, he's right. A group in the crowd has started booing. Present Mike howled as the audience began to heckle him, though clearly, Bakugo didn't give two shits. Hell, he didn't even give one shit. But to be honest, I agree an elbow. What's he big idea? He cried as he was suddenly interrupted. Is the one who said he's toying with her a pro? How many years of active duty? Aizawa said, speaking up for the first time since the match began. If that's what you're taking away from this, then you can leave. No point in watching. Go home and start looking at job hunting sites. She's come this far. and he knows her strength. His caution shows that he recognizes her as a worthy opponent, he said, saying the most at one time he'd said all day, sufficiently cowing the booing heroes. It's exactly because he wants to win so badly that there's no room for carelessness or holding back. Almost ready. Thanks, Bakugo, Ochako said as she slowly rose to her feet. Thanks for not dropping your guard, she said, bringing her fingertips together. The physical strain stretched across her visage, disappearing like the tension on a loosed bowstring. Feeling the air pressure shift above them, more so than it had before, Genki and Oki both looked up to see that the debris Ochako had been subtly lifting high into the air was suddenly all coming down. A veritable avalanche, minus the mountains screaming down like a meteor shower. As Ochako rushed in for the TKO, however, Bakugo brought up his arm and obliterated the entire concrete deluge in a single blast with the force of a tactical missile, the backlash whipping those in the front seats back while Ochako was sent flying backwards, practically out of bounds. Man, that was pretty intense. Oki hummed as tiny shards and pebbles of concrete drizzled like rain. Yeah, really intense, Genki said as he looked at the round-faced girl, her eyes wide with shock and despair as her clutch move was foiled. What an explosion. Uraraka's secret plan just went up in smoke. You know, I'm actually pretty glad she's in a different block from me, because, Genki said as Ochako forced herself back to her feet, diving into the meat grinder once more. I'm not sure I could stand up to that kind of determination, he said, singing the girl's praises. A moment later, however, Ochako listed to the side, falling flat on her stomach, her body trembling as the strain of overusing her caught up with her. Not yet, Ochako bit out as Midnight ran to her side. I can do this. I can still fight, she said as she crawled across the ground, her sheer, staggering willpower keeping her in the fight when all others would have fallen. Aru-san, Aka-san, she said as she kept on going. Even after going so far beyond her limit, the unwavering love she held for her family spurring her onward, the crowd's cheers washing her over like a tsunami, nearly enough to drown out the memory of the promise she'd made. However, no matter how much the spectators rooted for her, urging her on, it was all for naught in the end. No matter how much she struggled, Uraraka Ochako just wasn't strong enough. Uraraka is unable to continue. Bakugo moves on to the second round, Midnight announced once Ochako fell silent. MHA, for the sixth matchup of the first round, Manly and Passionate Steel. From the hero course, it's Tetsu versus Manly and Passionate Hardening. From the hero course, it's Ijiru Kirishima. Present mic announced. Even their intros are the same. Kirishima and Genki alike both squawked at the same time. Kirishima on the verge of tears while Genki was completely exacerbated. I can't tell if he's being redundant on accident or on purpose. Oki hummed as the match began with a cry of sixth match. Start. That didn't hurt at all. Tetsu growled after the first hit he received after their knuckles clashed. That didn't hurt either. Kirishima growled after the first hit he received after their knuckles clashed. For the next 10 minutes, Kirishima and Tetsu beat one another up, the two of them going unconscious after a final cross counter. Hey, anyone who can last 10 minutes is a fucking stallion. A crass hero in red and black one-piece suit sitting behind Genki and his mother said aloud. What? We were all thinking it. He pouted. Who is this guy talking to? Genki wondered. It's a mirror image quirk matchup. Tetsu versus Kirishima. Present mic announced. Just a straight-up beatdown with these two. And the winner is. He paused as Midnight stepped forward to appraise the damage. They are both down. We have a tie, Midnight proclaimed. In the event of said tie, we'll determine our winner after they recover with a quick arm wrestling match. Or something. MHA. For the seventh matchup of the first round. Offense and defense in one body. The Dark Samurai accompanied by Dark Shadow. From the hero course, it's Takoyami Fumikage versus All-Purpose Creation. She was admitted through recommendations, so her abilities are certified. Also from the hero course, it's Yaoyorozu Momo. That Yaoyorozu girl. She doesn't look very confident, does she? Genki asked as the girl drew her arm across her body. Hand on her bicep. On the other end of the spectrum, Bird Boy seems way too into this, Hitoshi hummed, seeing Takoyami crossing his arms, motionless, eyes closed, and completely stoic. Seventh match. Start. So that's what he meant by all-purpose creation, Genki hummed as Momo formed a metallic kite shield out of her own skin, battering her a step backwards, flying up before swooping down for another attack. Like a bird of prey, the jet black quirk swooped down again and again. Momo put completely on the defensive in the wake of those relentless attacks. Her shield knocked loose. Momo summoned another shield in half the time, only for what followed to play out the same way. Momo sent skidding back once more with a shriek. All of a sudden, Fumikage retracted. The girl blinking in confusion. In an instant, she summoned a 4-foot-long bow staff. Yaoyorozu. Midnight suddenly cut in. Out of bounds. Momo's eyes going wide. The girl looked down to see she had in fact been knocked out of bounds. As retreat hadn't been because of a limit of time or range. There was simply no more reason to fight. An overwhelming victory. A completely overwhelming victory. Present Mike announced, driving the knife deeper in as Momo processed just how badly she had lost. That has got to hurt her confidence. Genki winced, seeing the defeated look in the girl's eyes. She'll bounce back. Remember, girls are tough. And if she can't bounce back, maybe she wasn't meant to be a hero at all, Oki said with crossed arms. Well, she said looking up at the electronic tournament board. Looks like you're up next. Yeah, looks like it. Genki nodded as he exhaled deeply, his tailored clothes rippling. Wish me luck, he asked over his shoulder. Where you're going, you don't need luck, just a little skin. Gotta build the fanbase while they're young, Oki said, striking a pose, blowing him a kiss. Alka-san, you're embarrassing me, Genki said, flushing red. Genki, Hitoshi said, walking up to them. Don't you worry about your mother. I'll keep her in line while you're down there. Hey, what's that, Oki said before going fish-eyed. For all of 3 seconds before shaking it off. Supposed to mean, I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Shinso huffed at how easily his was broken. Like mother, like son, I guess, he sighed, rubbing the back of his head. Still, my statement stands. I'll try to rein her in. I temper my sense of decency and expectation. Walking off. As he made his way to the tunnel, Genki was met with applause and good luck not only from the audience, but the general chorus and even the pro heroes as well. He'd heard plenty of times that people loved an underdog story because they could more vicariously self-insert themselves into them, like harem anime with a super bland protagonist. But to actually receive this kind of adulation when years before his stigma had caused people to hold him beyond arm's length, it felt really good. Like all the effort he'd put in would finally pay off, even if it hadn't returned dividends right away. MHA. All right, folks, our pre-preliminary fight is about to begin, Present Mike announced as the general and hero course students faced off against one another. On one side we have the dark horse of the sports festival, the underdog who pulled his way through 2 rounds remaining undefeated and rocking those short pants. From the general course, Gakubari Genki. Waves of applause spilling down into the arena, none louder than his own mother. Genki drew a soft smile to his face as he waved to his adoring public. Playing to the crowd was just another part of what it meant to be a hero, albeit not as much as during the age of corporate heroes where all you had to do was show up and flash as many logos to the camera as physically possible. And on the other, facing off against his own partner from the last round, the grape-headed boy with the tiny character design. Minoru Mainta. Don't bring my character design into this. Mainta wilted. 8th match pre-match fight. Start. Mainta. I appreciate you helping me get this far, but I can't afford to lose here, Genki said as he got into a stance. Ultimate move. Grape RUUUUSH. Mainta called out as he rushed forward. Any form of witty banter pushed to the back of his mind as he tore countless protrusions from his scalp and through them, a deluge of purple rain sailing toward the bug-like teen. Well, alright then, Genki said as Mainta got straight to the point, the teen rapidly dodging from side to side, contorting himself into odd angles and impressive feats of balance and agility as he dodged the projectiles. A soaring toward his face that Mainta had lead him into with his previous volley. To his and one ace shock, the oily-haired teen actually slapped it aside with a loud whap, the sticky ball flying sidelong, forcing Midnight to dodge with an undignified yelp. What the hell? Mainta cried in shock, his assault momentarily ceasing while up in the stands. Izuku frantically scribbled into his notebook, wondering what kind of abilities would allow someone to completely nullify a super powerful adhesive like. Don't forget, Mainta, I've witnessed what your quirk could do firsthand too, Genki said, stepping forward, walking over and even atop the teens with seeming impunity as the orbs squished under his oily soles like overripe fruit. And I know exactly how to fight quirks like that, he said with a smile as he let his hand rest at his side, a droplet of oil falling from his fingertip. Well, that isn't fair at all, Mainta whined. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't give a fuck, Genki said with a menacing smile as he ground his heel into the ground. Goki rush, he cried out as he suddenly accelerated. AYIGH, Mainta screamed as Genki suddenly closed in on him in a blur, right leg drawn back. GOKIKIIICK. Genki roared as 3 vents similar to on his palms dilated in a line down the back of his right calf, the compressed air that shot out giving the kick a little extra punch as he caught Mainta in the chest with his shin. The grape-headed teen sent soaring out of bounds like an American football a moment later, as if fate had decided to come full circle, instead of landing harshly on the concrete steps or even a vacant seat as spectators fled out of the way. The grape-headed teen landed atop the rotund stomach of the man whose had been acquired by him during the scavenger hunt prior. It's going. It's GOOD. Present Mike cheered, many of the Americans in the audience shooting up to their feet and raising their arms like a field goal. Minoru is out of bounds. The winner is Gakubari, Midnight announced, the audience cheering at the spectacle. For as short a fight as that was, the ultimate moves, at least in the declarative sense, added a nice bit of kick to the fight. Gakaberry, even though you completed your match in almost record time, you still have the option of taking a brief recess before your follow-up fight with Ashido Mina. I'm good to go another round, he said, pounding his fist, causing the audience to cheer. But it'll take a while for Ashido-san to get down here, so I'd be left waiting anyway, he interrupted, causing the fanfare to die down. I'll be back after a quick water break. How does that sound? I'll allow it, Midnight said with a smile, still grinning from his clever double entendre. MHA. While Genki stepped out of the stage to have his aforementioned water break, nervous murmuring rose across 1A's spectator box. Well, guess he didn't tire himself out that much. By the time he finishes that water break, he'll probably be back to a full tank, Zero sighed as he pat Mina on the shoulder. My condolences. Hey, don't make it sound like I've lost already, Mina pouted, turning her attention to the most quirk-savvy person in their class. Any advice, Midoriya? Speed, wings, compressed air, reaction time, oil, antennae, Izuku muttered frantically. I feel like I've seen these abilities in one place before. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't recall. You keep doing you, sweetie, Mina said, patting the teen on the shoulder as he continued to mutter, oblivious to everything going on around him. Well, wish me luck, everyone. Try not to let him kick you, Suyu put in. As a girl who never skipped leg day, in a way she could appreciate the technique he'd put into Minta's airtime. And don't get caught up in his oil slick. Ida then spoke up. If that stuff gets onto your shoes, you can say farewell to your coefficient of friction. Don't let him get his hands on you, Gyro added with a small shudder. So gross. Give him one for me, Ashido-san, Aoyama said, giving her a thumbs up. Avenge me, he wailed dramatically. Hey, don't you guys worry about me, Mina said with a grin. What could he possibly dish out that we haven't seen already? If only she knew. MHA, you know him. You love him. The dark horse underdog of the Yuuei Sports Festival. How far will he climb to the top? From the general course, it's Gakaberry Genki versus, is something going to come out of Ho's horns? Well, from the hero course, the pretty and pink superheroine to be, it's Ashido Mina. Present Mike announced a few minutes later as the two teens limbered up, Genki stretching out his legs while Mina stretched her arms above her head. Gakaberry, get her. A voice suddenly cried out, Genki looking up into 1A's spectator box to see the guy he'd just kicked up and at it again. Beat her like in those fighting games where their clothes get ripped off. Well, he sure recovered quick, Genki deadpanned. Sorry, I took him of all people into the final round. He apologized to the girl in front of him. With a 10 million point bullseye slapped across my back, I was desperate for anyone to team up with me. Hey, no worries, Jin-kun. In a minute none of that will even matter. Mina taunted good-naturedly, an infectious grin on her face. Final match of the preliminary round. Start. Ashido Mina, Genki shouted the moment Present Mike's announcement ended. Don't hold back on me just because I'm from the general course, because I'm going to come at you with everything I've got. Right, cause I wouldn't have it any other way, Mina said enthusiastically after a shocked pause. Show me what you're made of. Oh my, what a bold declaration, Present Mike crooned. Genki certainly has the mettle to back it up. Just how will our little pink alien fare against the dark horse of the sports festival? On the surface, Genki's words might not have all that much meaning, but on a subliminal level, what he's doing is actually quite brilliant, Aizawa thought with a wry smile as what the Gakaberry boy was scheming beneath the surface. By using pre-fight dialogue at the point of the fight where everyone would be paying more attention to what was being said and take it super literally, Genki was bringing both himself and Mina onto a neutral middle ground. On the surface it was purely for the sake of good sportsmanship. But underneath that, he was running preemptive damage control so nothing like in Bakugo's fight would happen to him if he beat up his female opponent. Because for some reason in the 23rd century people still bitched about that sort of thing. What a logical ruse, Aizawa thought with a wry smile as Genki made the crowd, and even his opponent, dance atop the palm of his hand. Brand protection aside. Hey, quit copying me, Mina cried as she and Genki both strafed around one another in an attempt to flank, one propelling themselves with a weak acid while the other used oil. What are you talking about? My oil was out of my souls a half second before your acid was. Genki bit back, adding a bit of levity to the start of their fight. Well, quit following me, she retorted. Hey, I started first, so you're the one following me. Genki bit back. Well, if you won't attack first, I will, Mina said as she changed direction. Yasha, Ashido Mina goes on the offensive, she said with a grin as fat globules of acid formed on her raised palms, the pinkette chucking them with a cry of acid throw. My new shirt. Genki cried as he was struck in the chest, the teen backing away from her as the textile fibers steamed, breaking down and exposing his flat stomach. I'm not letting you get away. Acid throw, acid throw, acid throw, acid throw, acid through. Her declaration trailed off as she inadvertently melted away more than she'd bargained for. Ashido Mina. If you melt away any more of his clothing, you will be disqualified. Midnight cut in. Too little too late. Genki grumbled, the layer of oil forming a membrane over his skin as his attire was melted down to naught but rags and threads. The shirt a lost cause. Genki discarded the now ruined garment before commenting, "Does anyone else feel a draft?" before looking down. Son of a language. The majority of Genki's pants melted away as well. Instead of boxers or briefs, it was revealed that he was instead clad in a pair of black Speedo-style trunks with white racing stripes down the sides, glistening with the same oily sheen as the rest of his body. While before the audience became privy to what he looked like topless because he wanted to reduce drag and wind resistance for the fall, now almost the whole of his body was on view for everyone to see as threads snapped and the rest of his clothing fell away to pool around his ankles, leaving him in nothing but a swimsuit and his sneakers, which of course made it really creepy, at least to the Americans, that it was a 15-year-old who was now being sexually objectified by the masses, if the whistling and catcalls were anything to go by. Nice butt, Suyu said, making her thoughts known as another strip of cloth was melted away from his Speedo-clad derriere. DAMNIIIT. My COULD and their quirks be reversed. Minta wailed before Kyoka made her thoughts on the issue known. Holy crap, did you plan this? Mina gawped as she covered her reddening face, peeking between splayed fingers. First off, eyes up here. Genki raged as his opponent's eyes wandered. Second, this was just in case there was a water obstacle like last year. I suppose that's fair, Mina admitted with a pout as her eyes darted. Also, what the heck did you think would happen when you started flinging acid everywhere? If I didn't use it the last second, I'd have had to sue you for sexual harassment. He raged as he kicked away the remaining scraps of cloth at his feet. Well, okay, but you think maybe we could take a brief recess so you could put a change of clothes on? Mina asked. I swear not to use my on you anymore. Denied. Midnight cut in. Well, that was fast. Present Mike chuckled. The fight will resume uninterrupted. At least we don't have to cut to commercial because of another wardrobe malfunction. Aizawa sighed when he remembered last year's sports festival. What's the matter, Mai-chan? Genki taunted. You afraid of a little skinship? He asked as he took a step towards her, his nose scrunching a moment later. Oh crap, it got on my shoes. He then cried as the tops of his sneakers began to melt from the runoff. Damn it, Mai-chan. This is why we can't have nice things. Hey, it's not like I planned it this way, Mina cried, since by the looks on everyone's faces being sent her way, she was being made out to be some kind of pervert. Once again, what the heck did you think would happen when you started flinging acid everywhere? Trust me, I'm not keen on seeing any more skin than I already am. Your darting eyes do not inspire confidence. Genki deadpanned. Enough, let's just fight already, Mina said with a reddening face. Get over here. With pleasure, Genki grinned as he ran at her as well. While Midnight squealed giddily about teenaged oil wrestling, Mina and Genki met in the middle, fingers interlocked as the two teens grappled. Acid and oil dribbling from both their palms, pooling at their feet, the two teens circled one another as they attempted to overpower the other. Heh, you're pretty good, Mina said with a grin as the oily teen held his ground against her. Oh, I'm just getting started. The next moment Genki grabbed Mina's shoulders, throwing both legs under her right armpit before circling around beneath her left, his legs sweeping up and trapping her neck between his thighs. Genki's torso swinging back around. The centrifugal motion spun them once, twice, 3 times over before he swung his torso back under Mina's arm, planted his feet firmly on the ground, and sent Mina for a loop. Whoa, what an epic Black Widow throw. Present Mike crooned as Mina was thrown onto her back. How the heck did you do that? Who even taught you that? Mina cried, flushed redder in the face than usual, thinking back to the teen's oily, lean, Speedo-clad thighs wrapped around her face. Hey, it's embarrassing for me too, you know, Genki said, a dusting of red on his own cheeks as he got back into a stance. Don't think I'll let you out of here unscathed, Ekai-kun. If I'm a pervert, you're a super pervert for trying to make me naked, Genki cried as Mina rushed at him, Mina throwing her entire weight into his midsection. Arms wrapped around his waist, the girl tried to force him to the ground, only to begin slipping off her opponent's lean, oiled-up body like a fireman's pole, her hands scrambling for any kind of handhold, before Mina could grab his Speedo and inadvertently cause a wardrobe malfunction. Genki leaned down and trapped the girl's head between his arms in a textbook standing guillotine choke, the pink-skinned girl flailing her arms as she tried to fight her way out of the choke. His oily hide only served to foil her at every turn, the oil around her neck actually making it harder to get out as an airtight seal was formed. Before she could black out, Mina flooded her soles with acid, melting new footholds into the ground at her feet, giving her the leverage she needed to finally force Genki to the ground. In a few moments, the teen's oily hide proved to be a detriment, as Mina started sliding him back first towards the out-of-bounds line. Mina holding strong, Genki was forced to relinquish his grip of her, lest he lose on a technicality. Yuuei, I'm all slimy. Mina whined as she scraped the oil off of her neck. I hope you'll take responsibility for this, she said, tugging at her oiled-up clothes. Phrasing. Present Mike whooped, muffling Genki's mirrored outburst as he and Mina got into ready stances on some more. Come on, Mina said, running at him. Genki circling around behind her and backpedaling away from the pink-skinned girl's grip. Don't you want Mai-chan to give you another hug? No, Genki hummed as he waited until the opposite out-of-bound line was at his back. I want you to make a mistake, he said, suddenly zipping forward. Dropping down, Genki slid between the girl's legs like a baseball player with the help of his oily hide, the oily-skinned teen rolling onto his belly and grabbing the girl's ankles as he went. Mina had to windmill her arms backwards so she wouldn't land out of bounds face first. The next moment, Genki leapt up, straddling the girl's back and bringing her to the ground, the pink-skinned girl wincing as she planted her palms on the ground at her sides, arching her back so wouldn't bite off her tongue or have her chin hit the out-of-bounds line. Mina soon found her chin being lifted away, but not for her own benefit. Genki's right arm snaking around her neck. Mina soon found her left arm being twisted behind her back and his knees at her hips as he bent her backwards, the girl yelping as she was drawn into a 90-degree angle armbar. Itai. Mina winced in pain as her right arm flailed and her legs kicked helplessly, secreting acid from her neck and wrist to no avail as once more her slid off is like water off a duck's back. Ashido Mina, can you still move? Midnight asked, a tiny rivulet of blood dribbling from her nose as the two teens writhed against one another. Yeah, I'm not out of this crick. Yow, all right. I give. Mina cried as she was drawn into an acute angle arm bar. Mina has conceded. The winner is Gakaberi, Midnight announced, the audience cheering from the edges of their seats as Mina was released, the girl letting a satisfied sigh mixed with a whine leave her lips as she laid parallel to the ground. Mina, Genki said as he stood above his defeated opponent. That was a wonderful fight. I hope we can spar again, someday, he said with a soft smile as he held out his hand. Heh, you're not so bad yourself, Mina said with a grin as she took his hand, allowing herself to be pulled up. Though next time, try to keep your clothes on. Hey, that was your fault, not mine. Still, that was a heck of a fight, Gen-kun. You better not lose to anyone else, you hear? She asked, holding out her fist. I can only promise to do my best, Genki said as he returned the fist bump, Mina's infectious smile spreading to him. So, not that I don't enjoy the free show and all, she said as Midnight squealed about dreams come true in the background. But are you going to put your clothes back on, or? She asked with a grin as she pointed to his near-naked body. Hey, you were the one getting all handsy, Genki said, crossing his hands over his chest like a girl bereft of their swimsuit. Only because you lubed yourself up and tried to wrestle me, Mina said with a grin and an eye smile. And with that, the preliminary round is now concluded, Present Mike announced as Genki and Mina continued to banter back and forth. We'll need a brief intermission to get all the juices off the stadium floor, so grab your concessions and take your bathroom breaks. We'll be back real soon. You did great out there, Gen-chan. I'm so proud of you, Oki cooed from outside the shower room. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself too, Genki admitted as he stood in the hot shower, washing away the sheen of oil on his body as he thought back to his fights thus far. While Minda was quite literally small fry, Ashido Mina was a more serious contender. Were it not for his Goki oil flow, acid armor, Mina might have given him more than just a chemical burn or two, and thankfully he'd been able to preserve his modesty once the acid started flying. Most of his dignity, at least. While one concern over the whole debacle was what kind of weirdos and pervs might want him to intern at their agency, assuming he advanced far enough that the hero course would want to take him in. Even if he got a reputation as a pervert, heroes like Kayama Nimuri Aka, the R-rated hero, Midnight was proof that even with a rep like that, you could still have a fulfilling career as a pro hero. He just hoped he wouldn't have to strip too much in this tournament. He actually wanted to be taken seriously by his peers after graduation. And unlike Midnight, his quirk didn't necessarily give him an excuse to run around in super revealing attire. You should probably hurry up. Once they get the last of yours and Mai-chan's fluids off the ground, they'll get started with the quarterfinal round. You wouldn't want to miss the heads up about your possible opponents, would you? Right, I'm just about finished, Genki said, stepping out of the shower, toweling himself off, getting on his clothes and tightening the laces of his shoes, which also had to be replaced. The moment he stepped out of the student showers, a wave of unease suddenly washed over him. His blood growing hot and his heart pounding against his rib cage, the teen's legs buckled underneath him, a hand clawing at the wall as he fell. The teen was barely able to take a knee, his mother catching him before he could fall the rest of the way. Before you go out there, you should probably take your medicine, she said, fishing a small cylinder wrapped in a handkerchief out of her purse. You left your dosage at home in your excitement this morning. I wonder, Genki hummed as he propped himself against the nearby wall, looking down at the wrapped cylinder in his hand, then towards the arena down the hall. Can I really become a hero if I have to take something like this all the time? He asked aloud. I'm sorry for what happened to Dad. Jin-chan, we've been over this 100 times already. What happened back then wasn't your fault. It was that villain's fault. Oki pouted, resting her fists on her hips. Well, it sure feels like it's my fault, Genki grumbled as he rolled up his left sleeve. Unwrapping the handkerchief and pulling the cap off the triple-needled syringe with his teeth, Genki stared intently at the trio of hypodermic needles, their ends glinting in the light as his thoughts turned to the most intimidating members of Class 1A. The inescapable walls he'd have to overcome if he wanted even a shot of promotion. If only I were stronger, Genki said as he pressed the needles into the bottom of his bicep, gritting his teeth as the dark blue drug entered his bloodstream. His blood cooled in his veins, and the danger passed. MHA, so, what did I miss? Genki asked of Hitoshi as they got back to their seats. Not much. Kirishima and Tetsu arm wrestled for the tiebreaker, the indigo-haired teen answered. Also, Midnight started getting real weird about it. Though if you ask her, she'll just say she's passionate about her work as an educator, Oki sighed. So who won? Genki asked. Kirishima, Shinso answered. Apart from yourself and Shizaki, most of the battle tournament looks like a bunch of one-in fighting. You still bummed out you lost. Even if I was, would that change anything? The indigo-haired teen asked. Don't you worry about me. I'll make it into the hero course my own way. You just focus on getting there yourself. Otherwise you'll have to wait another year for a chance like this. Yeah, I'll be sure to keep that in mind. Genki hummed as he rubbed his left bicep. The first match of the quarterfinals starting with Ernest. I'll even put in a good word for you when I get there. If you get there, Shinso retorted. Best chance you'll have is winning this thing, so don't count your chickens before they hatch. I'll be sure to keep that in mind, Genki said, turning his eyes to the arena, orbs of brown drinking in every detail on who he might have to fight later on. MHA. Barring one dark horse in the sports festival, both of these competitors have won top marks thus far. On one side we have Midoriya Izuku from Class 1A, the guy with the crazy strong right hook. On the other side we have Todoroki Shoto, also from 1A. This kid's too cool for school. Just who will win this epic opening bout? Quarterfinal first round. Start. Todoroki's immediate opening move was to summon a giant glacier, the massive wall of ice shooting towards Midori. The next moment, however, Izuku flicked out his middle finger, a massive blast of wind ripping the glacier to shreds and sending Todoroki backwards. The two-tone teen would have been sent completely out of bounds if he hadn't made a wall at his back. WHOAAA. He smashed through. Present Mike whooped. God, that looks like it really hurts, Genki retched, almost on the verge of hurling as the process repeated itself 4 more times. Midoriya's fingers left purple and broken as he expended them one by one. Yeah, it's like he can barely control his own quirk, Shinso said as Todoroki leapt up from atop his own glacier and swooped down on Midoriya from above. Maybe he's a late bloomer, Oki questioned as the greenette dodged, Todoroki palming the ground and sending another wave of ice out to close the distance. The teen's right foot getting caught. The next moment another blast of wind kicked up through the arena, dust and ice shards sent flying in every direction. The clouds clearing, it was then revealed that nearly the whole of Midoriya's left arm was purple and bruised, blood dripping from numerous lacerations. URP. God, this is hard to watch, Genki groaned on the verge of hurling. These front row seats are more trouble than they're worth. Only defending and dodging. Todoroki asked. It's taking a toll on you. Suddenly all around Genki, the audience started muttering about how Todoroki was already stronger than most pros or things like as expected from the son of the number 2 hero and so on. Personally, Genki found it all quite offensive because they were basically treating him like an extension of his father instead of his own person. Sorry for all this. I appreciate it, though, Midoriya. Thanks to you. He doesn't look too happy, Todoroki hummed as he looked to the side, watching Endeavor silently fume up in the stands as he continued to use only his quirk. Anyway, with both your hands destroyed like this, you can't fight anymore. Let's just end this. Whoa, and Todoroki continues his relentless assault. Could this next ice attack win it all? Present Mike asked. Who says I quote am done? Izuku demanded, Todoroki going wide-eyed as yet another smash blasted through the air. Todoroki barely a meter from being knocked out of bounds as Izuku flicked out with his broken fingers. Why go that far? Todoroki asked as he got up from his barricade. You're shivering, Todoroki, Izuku said as his body trembled. Quirks are still just physical abilities. You have a limit to how much of that you can bear. But then, you could always use your left side to thaw yourself out, right? Everyone's giving their all to win, to achieve their goals, to make it to the top. And you're gonna win with half your power. You still haven't put a scratch on me. Give me everything you got. Come at me, Todoroki shouted, clenching a hand with broken fingers as he tried egging his opponent on. Geez, what's this idiot planning? Does he even want to win? Shinso asked, noticing that Todoroki's body was starting to freeze over. Hard to say, but he definitely egged Todoroki on just then, Genki hummed as Todoroki scowled angrily. closing the distance between them on foot. The two nearing one another, Midoriya suddenly shot forward the moment his opponent raised his left leg mid-stride, the teen diving in with a right punch that nearly folded his opponent in half, his left arm getting frozen over in the exchange. As a result of said hit, Todoroki was sent tumbling across the stage like a ragdoll, the spectators wincing at the sounds his body was making with each bounce. Todoroki's ire rising. With a stomp of his right foot he sent out yet another wave of ice. However, this one was far weaker, weak enough that Midoriya could sidestep it, even as messed up as he was. Todoroki moving in for another attack. Midoriya then slipped his broken thumb into his mouth, flicking it out with his cheek and sending Todoroki flying once more, the two-tone teen the closest he'd ever gotten to being knocked out of bounds, just trying to meet expectations. A smiling, dependable, cool hero, Izuku muttered as he dove after Todoroki. That's what I want to be. That's why I'm giving it everything. For everyone, he said, headbutting Todoroki, sending him reeling. Your experiences, your determination. I can't even begin to imagine what all that's like, but if you want to reject your father, that's fine. But you don't have the right to be number one if you aren't going to use your full power, he shouted, drawing his right arm back. That's why I'm going to win this, Todoroki rendered, dumbstruck by Izuku's words, memories he'd long suppressed flashing before his eyes. The two-tone teen was completely open for the right straight that Izuku landed in his gut, sending him flying through the air. No, I'll show my father, Todoroki muttered. Your power, it's your power, not his, Midoriya shouted, trying to get through to Todoroki, even now. Of course, Genki didn't have the whole picture to know what they were going on about, why they were blabbering so much during the middle of the fight, but just like many others, he too was completely shocked when Todoroki began spilling out tongues of flame from the left side of his body, a mantle of bright orange fire that billowed around him, the ice dominating his right side thawing. Yes, SHOTOOO. A voice suddenly bellowed, Genki looking up to see that the blabbermouth was none other than the number 2 hero, Endeavor. So you finally accepted it. Yes, excellent, he proclaimed as he walked down the stairs with bold, almost violent strides, the flames masking him burning with an almost manic glee. It all starts for you now. With my blood pumping through your veins, you will surpass me. You will fulfill my AMBI. Before Endeavor could finish his rambling speech, a shadow loomed over him before a massive hand suddenly clamped down on his shoulder, heedless of the fires that burned there and tightening like an industrial vice. All Might, this is my moment. Don't you dare get in my... The moment Endeavor looked over his shoulder, however, it became obvious that this was not All Might he was dealing with. Easily taller than him by half a foot in stature, the massive man whose hand gripped his shoulder was incredibly muscular with thick, dark brown skin, bearing a large physical resemblance to the Homo erectus. The man's hair was incredibly short with pair of bug-like antennae sticking out atop his head, his eyes beady with an emotionless expression on his face. The man was clad in a similar triple extra large suit to All Might, only colored white with a black tie. Though he'd been retired for several years now, his identity was unmistakable, at least to Endeavor. The massive hulk of a man staring down at Endeavor with a completely neutral expression. He then raised a digit to his lips, shushing the number 2 hero as though he were not but a petulant child. Bristling with rage, Endeavor was about to snap back at the has-been hero, only for the massive hand from before to clamp itself around his face instead, silencing any protest he had before he was dragged off, leaving Midoriya and Todoroki to fight uninterrupted. Well, someone's got issues, Shinso muttered as he watched Endeavor being dragged away. Yeah, no shit, Genki hummed. Still, nice to know my dad was able to get here in time for the big event. Never thought I'd make it this far, to be honest. Wait, that thing was your father. Shinso gawped in complete and total shock as he beheld the larger-than-life figure in the distance. Shush, the fight's still going on, Oki shushed, Midoriya and Todoroki exchanging a few more words before they dove back into the heat of it once again. A mantle of flame enveloping the left side of Todoroki's body. A massive sheet of ice spilled out his right foot with renewed vigor. At the same time, Midoriya squared his feet, his left pant leg ripped away by an invisible force while arcs of lightning danced across his right arm. The green-haired teen lunging over Todoroki's ice, the two-tone teen in turn called forth a massive wall of flame, the two threatening to meet in the middle, 5 walls of cement rising up mere moments before contact. Hit the deck, Oki cried as she tackled Genki, who was in the process of tackling Shinso to the ground the moment she sensed the air pressure changing. The very next moment, a loud WHAKOOOM filled the arena as a massive blinding light erupted from the center of the stage, a blast of rising air and shards of concrete nearly blowing the people in the front row out of their seats, the blast of hot air colliding with cold even managing to hit those in the nosebleed section. What the heck just happened? Present Mike gawped, mirroring everyone's thoughts as Genki and his mother poked their heads over the railing, beholden to the nearly unmitigated destruction the two's ultimate moves had wrought. All that chilled air was heated up in an instant, making it expand, Aizawa said matter-of-factly, seemingly nonplussed by what he'd just witnessed. Coming up with a textbook explanation like that so quickly was a credit to his many years of experience as a pro. Not that I'm not glad he's still in one piece. But how the hell is he still in one piece? Genki asked as he looked to the left, spying the prone form of Midoriya leaned against the far wall as the dust began to settle. His body amazingly intact despite weathering what may as well have been a tactical nuke dropped in their laps. Midoriya is out of bounds. The winner is Todoroki, Midnight announced moments after Izuku slid down the wall and dropped to the ground. MHA, suffice it to say, with the way Midoriya and Todoroki ripped the stage a superfluous new asshole, the faculty definitely had to call an intermission as they repaired the stage. So much of the stage had been borderline vaporized they had to whip up a completely new batch of cement. Even though Yuuei bought the stuff in bulk, this wasn't something you could just slap back together with a hope, a prayer, and some duct tape. While repairs were being made, many spectators left their seats to either refresh their snacks, or for those in the front row, get a fresh change of pants. It took a while, about as long as it took for Cementos to repair the stage, but eventually the fanfare for the first quarterfinal match died down, giving way to the second, which in comparison to the first was rather underwhelming. MHA. In the exciting second match of the quarterfinals, the not an assassin of Hero Course Class 1B, Shizaki Ibara, versus the boy that never skips leg day. It's the engine of destruction, Ida Tenya also of the Hero Course. Quarterfinal second round. Start. Ultimate move. Ada intoned as he got into a runner's start the moment the match began. Shizaki's vines creeping towards him like a wave of tentacles as his legs let out a keening whine. Recipro burst. Blue flames spilling out of his calves as the roar of a jet engine filled the air. In an instant Ada was behind Ibara, the user grasping her shoulders before shooting off once again. The user's eyes squinting until she came to a stop, eyes wide as she found herself out of bounds and all the time it took to blink. Shizaki is out of bounds, Midnight announced once she processed how quickly the match had ended. The winner is Ida. Holy shit, that was fast, Shinso gawped, realizing if he'd faced Ida in the first round and he wasn't able to get under his skin in time, it could have been his fight that ended just as quickly. Yeah, but it looks like he's a one-pump chump. Genki hummed as he noticed smoke sputtering from his mufflers after all of 10 seconds, Ada looking like the little car engine that couldn't. Gen-chan, where'd you learn that kind of language? His mother demanded with an angry pout. By army of one Samas, Genki replied, suddenly trembling with fear. So many marshmallows, so many oil massages. He shuddered as he hugged himself. The horror. He trembled with wide, manic eyes. Dude, you've got issues, Shinso said bluntly while his friend had brain-melting flashbacks. For the love of Kami, please tell me you left them at home. Genki pleaded on bent knees, his eyes darting around a very dark corner as though something would jump out at him. Don't worry, Gen-chan, your father has them working out of town today. You don't need to worry about them embarrassing the living daylights out of you. Oki giggled with a wave of her hand. Oh, thank Kami, Genki said as he crumpled tiredly like a wet sock. For today at least. No telling what those girls might pull tomorrow, Oki said cheekily, causing her son to wail into the heavens. So many issues, Shinso felt the need to repeat as nearby spectators gave them weird looks. MHA. In the third quarterfinal match, it's a clash of one of heavy hitters, the living nuclear warhead, Bakugo Katsuki, versus manly and passionate hardening stronger than steel, Ijuru Kirishima. Well, at least he mixed things up a little, Kirishima sighed, Bakugo cracking his knuckles off to the side. Quarterfinal third round. Start. Kirishima moved in with a right hook the moment the match started, his jagged enhanced knuckles drawing blood from Bakugo's cheek as they dodged at the last second. In return, Bakugo blasted Kirishima under the right arm at point-blank range, sending Kirishima staggering back. Huh, nice try. That's not gonna work on me, Kirishima said with a toothy grin, his shirt blown away revealing his torso too had become hardened. The red-headed teen diving in once again. Bakugo forced to dodge Kirishima's quirk-augmented fists lest they damage his future marketability. The blonde-haired teen was forced onto the defensive for a good minute until an opening presented itself, blasting Kirishima under his left arm. However, what was different was that while before Kirishima only staggered, now he was reeling. The red-haired teen soon smothered in another explosion at point-blank range, the teen guarding his face with his arms. The dust settling a moment later, Bakugo dove straight in, peppering his opponent with a one-man bombing raid that painted the air bright shades of yellow and orange. Kirishima weathered the staccato of explosions admirably. But in the case of the immovable object and the unstoppable force won. Now DIIIE. Bakugo raged as he swept his arm up with a final explosion thrown in. His opponent sent sailing through the air before landing flat on his back. Kirishima is unable to battle. The winner is Bakugo, Midnight announced a moment after checking on him. Yeah, no shit, he's unable to battle, Shinso deadpanned. Seeing these other fights, I'm starting to think I got off easy. Maybe. But I have the feeling it'd be really easy for you to get under that guy's skin, Genki hummed. Yeah, it did seem like he was the sort whose skin you could get under easily. Shinso nodded as he rubbed his back from when Midoriya threw him. So, how do you intend to beat that? I'm not completely sure, Genki admitted. I've still got to worry about this match before I even think of going up against Explosion Boy. MHA. In the final match of the quarterfinals, we have the Lord of Darkness himself, the Hero Course's own Chunibyu, Takoyami Fumikage, versus the General Course's own Master Oil Wrestler, Gakabari Genki. I am not a Chuni, Fumikage grumbled, blushing under his feathers. Hey, at least you didn't get called a Master Oil Wrestler, Genki grumbled, wondering if he'd have to cater to that part of the fanbase. Japan invented tentacle porn. It could invent just about anything else porn-related. Let's just say after the advent of paranormality, mutant-type quirks in particular, hentai started to get a bit more creative and disturbing, but also more creative. Internet rule number 35. Quarterfinals final match. Start. I don't care if you're a Chuni. If you do anything to the change of clothes that I just got, I'm suing your feathery ass. Genki raged. Believe me, that is far from my intention, Fumikage said, trying to remain as stoic as possible. Go, Dark Shadow. Hi, Abu, Dark Shadow said as he shot forward, aiming for a massive claw swipe. Genki backpedaling to see just how much slack the umbilical cord connecting the two had. The oily-haired teen noticed that Dark Shadow slowed down after roughly half of the stage's length. And not only was he on the end of his rope, but his physical movements seemed to slow as well. Like it took longer for to receive instructions from the brain controlling it. Okay, I can work with this, Genki said, dropping down onto all fours and zipping forward. The teen an oily blur as he shot past towards the bird-headed Takoyami like an oily bullet. Dark Shadow, return, Takoyami called out as he reeled his projection back into his body. Genki's antennae twitching, right as Dark Shadow was about to overtake him. The oily-haired teen leapt up and coiled his arm around the dark umbilical cord, riding the line towards Takoyami like a fish on a reel. The suddenness of this maneuver was so shocking that Takoyami couldn't raise his arms in time to block the reeled and flying double kick aimed at his chest. Dark Shadow following after his master as he was sent flying. The entity twisted over on itself and aimed to crush his opponent in a massive bear hug, only for Genki to fire his Goki thruster overhead, dropping him to the ground and out of Dark Shadow's clutches as he returned to his master's side. NGH. That speed of his is no joke. Takoyami winced as he held his chest. Sorry, I couldn't get a hold of him, Dark Shadow whimpered. It's all right. The match has only just begun, Takoyami said, getting to his feet. Wait, where'd we go? I don't know. I only took my eyes off him for a second, Dark Shadow said as he looked around. The sound of something dropping to the ground behind them. Takoyami and Dark Shadow alike whirled around. A blur of oily hair in the corner of their eyes, all the warning hey had before Genki took his feet out from under him in a sweeping low kick. The bird boy laid out on his back while fell upwards, hitting his head on the ground. Didn't think it's worked that well, Genki hummed as he watched Takoyami roll onto his feet while nursed his head. So, this isn't like in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where what happens to one happens to the other, he hummed, noticing they weren't nursing injuries the other sustained. Guess I'll have to hit Takoyami if I want the ko, he thought, getting low to the ground once again. Dark Shadow, you ready? Hi, go, Takoyami ordered, lunging forward only for Genki to begin strafing around Takoyami's right flank, following his oily-haired target, who proceeded to go faster and faster before Takoyami realized what he'd allowed to happen. The umbilical cord binding him in together had been firmly wrapped around his midsection, a sudden low tackle to his ankles sending him and tumbling to the ground in a literal tangle of bodies. Urgh, that's never happened before, Takoyami grumbled as he tried to recall and untangle himself, only for a weight to drop down onto his chest, a splayed hand placed in front of his face a moment later. I believe this is checkmate, Genki said as a honeycombing of vents dilated across his left palm, an ominous hissing sounding from the depths of his arm. Do your worst. He can take it, grumbled from his place underneath Takoyami. I'd rather not. Then surrender right now or you'll really regret it, Genki stated firmly. What if I say no? Takoyami reconsidered. Goki hiss, 130 decibel blast. The teen suddenly roared, putting his palm even closer to Takoyami's face. The hissing from his palm soon turning into the loud roar of a jet engine. Takoyami's back arched as he howled in pain. The aforementioned 130 decibel hissing roar washing over him. The bird-headed teen's head whipping about as he tried to escape, his body flailing as Genki tried to keep him pinned to the ground. The moment it looked like was about to escape, Genki turned his honeycomb palm on before clocking Takoyami across the face with his free hand. His screaming dying out as his head lolled back, Genki letting out a ragged gasp as he forced away the blackness encroaching on his vision. While whimpered, Midnight came up to them and checked Takoyami for a pulse before reaching her verdict. Fumikage is unable to battle. Gakabari Genki moves on to the semifinal round, Midnight announced, the audience exploding into cheers as the underdog won once again, going further and higher than any general course student before him. And with that, the quarterfinal round is over, and our final four have been selected. Present Mike announced as Takoyami was carted off. You all know the drill, people. We'll have a brief intermission, and then start the semifinal round once our four fighters have had the chance to rest up. And for those of you at home, stay tuned. Both of these competitors come from renowned hero families. It's a fight between elites. Ada Tenya versus Todoroki Shoto. Present Mike announced as the user of and the dual wielder of and stepped into the ring. Ada himself looked pumped, but Todoroki had a far-off look in his eye like he was thinking about something else. Semifinal first round. Start. Todoroki stomping his right foot forward and sending a sheet of ice sailing towards Ada. To everyone's amazement, Ada circumvented the instant obstacle completely with a standing long jump of all things. Ada transitioning into his recipro burst mid-flight and sweeping out with his leg. Todoroki scarcely dodged, getting his head taken off, only for Ada to transition that sweeping right kick into an overhead attack that slammed Todoroki to the ground. The moment Todoroki recovered, Ada had already grabbed him by the back of his shirt, hauling ass toward the out-of-bounds before his ultimate move crapped out. Halfway there, however, all of Ida's momentum died out as his stalled, a caking of ice stopping up the mufflers on his left leg. The momentary surprise that followed was all Todoroki needed to get his feet back under him, freezing Ada from the feet up, his left arm following for good measure, frozen up to his neck. Ada could only struggle in vain while Todoroki shook off that hit he'd taken. Well, that ended quickly. Shinzo hummed as Midnight announced her verdict. So, the indigo-haired teen hummed as he regarded the man from earlier who'd taken Genki's seat after the teen had wandered off to the waiting room. You're Genki's father. The massive man inclined his head towards Shinzo, nodding his head with a neutral expression on his face. He's a man of very few words, Oki clarified. Yeah, I noticed, Shinzo hummed. So, I hear you're a retired hero. What do you do for a living now? In the time they'd known one another, he and Genki didn't really bring their home lives onto school grounds, so this was obviously Shinzo's first time meeting them. He'd never seen any pictures of them or anything, just their names and that he'd taken after his mother. On one side you had the youthful Gakabari Oki on the softcore end of the mutant-type spectrum. On the other end of said spectrum was Gakabari Aries, sitting firmly in the hardcore part of the mutant-type spectrum. Sure, the guy looked big standing next to Endeavor, but up close and personal, the guy felt larger than life. Aries glancing over at Shinzo. When it became obvious he wasn't in the mood to talk, Oki took that cue to step in for her husband. After my husband retired from being a pro hero, he pulled some strings with United Studios thanks to the work he did for them and started a talent agency, Oki began. In the event we lack the expertise to manage any talent that wants to sign on with us, we reroute them to a reputable manager in our network of associates. And vice versa, she explained. Aries reaching into his suit and handing Shinzo an immaculate business card with practiced mechanical efficiency. God of War, Aries Idol Agency. Shinzo read aloud as he gave the card a once-over. The card itself was chalk white, regulation-sized. On the left side of the card was a sunflower logo with multicolored petals, the letters GAO, printed in white over the black center of the sunflower. The full name of the talent agency set in the middle of the card in addition to contact information revealed that the main building was located in Akihabara, which even in the 23rd century was still considered an otaku cultural center, still remaining as the most renowned shopping district for video games, anime, manga, and computer goods in addition to maid cafes and idol groups. On the side, Shinzo wondered how the giant of a man could handle such a small piece of paper with such thick fingers. Seriously, he looks like he could crush watermelons with those things, Shinzo thought, glancing at the man's hands before turning his attention back to the card. So that's what he meant by an army of one Samas, he hummed. Idols did tend to be female. It hadn't really come up between them whether or not they were only children, so after hearing that little tidbit earlier, he'd briefly assumed Genki was the only boy amongst an army of female siblings who loved to embarrass the living daylights out of him. Putting those thoughts to the side, Shinzo turned his attention back to the present. So, you think he's going to win? In turn, Aries inclined his head towards Shinzo, the massive man raising up an equally massive arm and giving him a thumbs up. That tells me absolutely nothing, Shinzo deadpanned. When Genki said his father was a man of few words, he wasn't joking. MHA. Elsewhere. Oh man, Ada was so close. Achako whined. Yeah, for a second there I thought he'd sink this thing, Kyoka admitted. The next fight's between Bakugo and that general course student. Think he stands a chance? Ajiro asked. No way. Have you seen what Bakugo's capable of? Kirishima asked. I have, firsthand, and there's no way Gakabari can top that. But isn't that exactly the sort of mentality that allowed him to elude defeat against all of us? Momo questioned aloud, the others wilting slightly. Without realizing it, they'd completely underestimated the oily-haired teen. And by the time they started taking him seriously, it had already been too late to do anything about it. Mainta, Mina, Takoyami, and Momo by extension had all been beaten by him, and because the specifics of his quirk had been hidden while Mainta had given him the down low on theirs, none of those he'd fought directly had been able to create a countermeasure. Speaking of which, Izuku, Ochako asked as she nudged the boy in the shoulder, eyes going wide as she beheld the incredibly detailed profile and compilation of research notes into what Genki's quirk could be, numerous what-ifs scratched out as he continued to narrow it down. Even though his arms were still busted up from surgery, he was still able to pore over the notes he'd already made. Come on, Izuku. Think. The green-haired teen muttered to himself as he dove down into his own little world. Kakaberi-san has been showing off his quirk almost non-stop since the obstacle course race. You should have everything you need to know to figure out what his quirk is all in your notes. The world around him fading out of focus. Within his mind's eye was a world of pure white and blue, a single streak of red flying ever further into the distance. Hugh Phoenix Wright Dual Destinies Ost. Synaptic Resonance. Okay, best place to start is from the beginning. What was his most prominent attribute shown during the obstacle course race? Speed, strength, durability. 3 mental blocks appearing in front of him. Izuku's train of thought broke through the correct answer like a pane of glass, the streak of red shooting off into the distance before more mental blocks barred his progress. Speed, that's right. Of all the attributes he displayed, it was his speed that was paramount in his victory. That narrows down what breed of mutant-type quirk he is quite a bit. Thinking ahead to the cavalry battle, the next question immediately came to mind. Beyond his speed, what defense mechanism connected to his quirk's ancestry did he display? Flight, armor, oil. Like before, 3 mental blocks appeared before him, and like before, his train of thought broke through the correct answer like a pane of glass, the streak of red shooting off into the distance before even more mental blocks barred his progress. Oil. Kakaberi's quirk let him secrete a near-translucent oil that served as a lubricant. Not many insects have secretions of that nature. The sheer volume can be accredited to him having the proportionate ability of whatever insect his quirk is based upon. The next clue laid in Genki's physical attributes, oily hair and antennae notwithstanding. The only major physical deviation from the baseline human form were the shiny dark brown elytron that shielded his wings. That in of itself normally wouldn't be enough to narrow his mutant archetype down since his mother was also a softcore mutant type. However, after looking down into the stands and spotting the oily-haired mother and son joined by the family patriarch, an old memory, one from 5 years ago he hadn't thought about in a long time, was jostled loose. The odds that that man down there being Genki's father is incredibly high. Now, where was it that I'd seen his face before? A bodybuilder, a retired hero, a pro athlete. Delving deep into his memories, Izuku racked his brain for the memories of every hero video, interview, poster, and paraphernalia he'd ever laid eyes upon as a kid. The man's build, size, and expression, or rather, a lack thereof, jostled the old memory completely free once he looked down into the stands and laid eyes on him once more. A retired hero. That's it. The answer is in his genealogy. And Ost. I know what his quirk is, Izuku shouted as the last of the pieces fell into place. Holy crap, you figured it out. Kirishima gawped. Well, don't leave us in suspense. Tell us, Mina begged. I have to tell Kaken. I have to warn him, Izuku said, running off after his old friend. Wait, warn him. Everyone gawped. MHA. With Todoroki moving on to the final round, Bakugo only had 2 obstacles remaining between him and his ambition. That kid from the general course, and then Todoroki himself. As Bakugo made his way down to the arena, plans of stomping that general course student under his heel forming in his mind, a hurrying of footsteps met his ears. Choosing to ignore it, the task became more and more difficult as the footsteps drew nearer, an irritating cry of Kaken, meeting his ears repeatedly until finally, "What, Deku? Can't you see I'm in the middle of something?" Bakugo demanded as the green-haired nerd ground to a halt in front of him. Kaken, listen to me, Izuku stammered as he cradled his notebook in his busted-up arms. I figured it out. I know what kind of mutant his quirk makes him. If you listen to my plan, I think you can beat him, UWAH. He then cried as Bakugo rounded on him, a furious snarl on his features as explosions peppered his palms. What was that? You think I can't win without your stupid plan? And no, I didn't say that. I just think your chances will improve if. Piss off. I don't need your help. I'm stomping that guy into the ground, and then Todoroki's next. The explosive teen raged, completely rebuking any contributions Izuku could have made as he stormed off, angrier than he'd been all day. MHA. In the red corner we have the guy you love to hate. Class 1A's own ticking time bomb, Bakugo Katsuki versus whoever thought he'd make it this far. The dark horse of the general course, it's Gakaberry Genki. Present Mike whooped. Gakaberry's growing fanbase making their approval known as the downtrodden, and the dropouts cheered louder than anyone else. Semifinal second round. Start. Hey Bakugo, Genki spoke up. One thing before we start. What? The blonde asked gruffly. I'm gonna win, Genki said with a tilt of his head and a cocky smile. Instead of a murderous uproar being kicked up, however, it was instead a hushed silence that spread across the arena. OHHH snap. Someone in the audience said a hushed minute later. What did you just say? Bakugo growled as angry red sparks popped in his palms, an angry vein pulsing in his forehead as his own words from before were thrown back in his face. In the semifinal round of the sports festival of all places. You heard me. The one who's going to win this fight is me, Genki said with an infuriating smile as he thumbed his chest. I beat you in the obstacle course race, and the cavalry battle after that. Way I see it, since I've been kicking your ass all day, I might as well make it 3 for 3. He said with raised fingers as his eyes crinkled. What are you gonna do about it? I'm gonna squash you like the bug you are. Bakugo raged, a murderous rage pouring off of him like when Monoma stole his headband. And I'm going to mail my shoe to the principal. And the gift wrapping, it's gonna be your ass. Well, things are heating up and no one's even thrown a punch yet. Present Mike whooped. This will definitely be a fight to remember, Aizawa hummed. Cue My Hero Academia asked the threat of offense and defense. Die. Bakugo raged as he stormed towards Genki, palms peppered with explosions as his nitroglycerin-laced sweat oxidized. Heads up, Genki said, peeling his shirt off his body as he shot forward, throwing it into Bakugo's face before they clashed. Die. Bakugo roared as he thrust out his hand and blasted the cloth to smithereens, his opponent nowhere in sight. A shadow flickering across his vision a moment later, Bakugo looked up in time to see Genki fluttering in the air above him, the oily-haired teen grabbing his extended wrist and hauling himself downward with a declaration of Gokini. SPLACK. Went Bakugo's nose as the falling knee strike was driven into his visage, followed by a falling 1-2 kick to his chest that threw him to the ground. Man, you must really suck at this. Are you sure you scored the highest in the entrance exam? Genki asked as he hopped away, bouncing on his feet with his fists raised, ready to move at a moment's notice. That was just a lucky shot. Bakugo growled as he snapped his nose back into place and shot out a glob of bloody phlegm. A lucky shot that got me first blood, Genki said with a cocky smile. Cocky bastard. It isn't cocky if I get results. Now is it, Bakugo? Several more veins throbbing in his head. Bakugo's face was soon split into a Glasgow grin as he threw his right arm forward, bracing it with his left. Let's see you try and dodge this. He growled as veins angrily throbbed up his arm, a staccato of explosions peppering his palm as he squared his feet. Holy crap. Is he doing what I think he's doing? Present Mike yelped. All of you behind Genki, get down. Aizawa shouted, Cementos raising as many walls between the stage and the audience as he possibly could. I won't let you, Genki said, dropping into a runner's stance, his wings raised up as numerous pores across his back and his legs dilated. GOKIBUUUURST. He roared as he shot forward with the roar of a jet engine. DIIIE. Bakugo roared as an explosion comparable to the one he used against Achako's clutch move spilled out of his palm. The deafening KABOOM of nitroglycerin going off, shaking the air. An enormous cone of destruction exploded in front of his palm, a massive trench dug into the stage. The massive blast tearing into Cementos concrete walls. The hastily made structures barely held together as the spectators in harm's way fled for their lives. All others dumbed into hushed silence. Smoke and debris raining down onto the half of the stage he'd utterly annihilated. Bakugo let out ragged breaths, a shit-eating grin on his face as he beheld the destruction in front of him. That'll teach you to screw with me, you fucking insect, he said proudly, utterly assured of his victory. That's the thing about insects, a familiar voice said from behind him, the blonde's eyes going wide as he stood frozen in shock. Sometimes we really bite. Squelch. G-H. Bakugo roared as teeth suddenly sank into his left shoulder, bringing his right arm around and blasting past his ear. At the last moment his attacker zipped out of the way, the blonde whirling around to the oily shadow. You, how the hell are you still alive? He demanded. That blast should have turned into a fucking grease stain. Aside from a few lacerations on his chest and arms, his opponent was completely unharmed. For a second there, I almost was. Genki panted raggedly, spitting blood from his mouth. If I didn't take notes from Ida-senpai's fight, I might not have been able to accelerate fast enough to slip around the cone of your explosion, he said, hiding the hitch in his shoulders as the vents across his back and legs throbbed angrily, the teen lightheaded after emptying out nearly every gasp of air from his body. Heh. Looks like I didn't totally miss. You're bleeding all over the place, Bakugo said with a self-assured grin, feeling victory still within his grasp. What, you mean this? Genki asked, running his fingers across his teeth, his fingertips coming back red. Clearly, someone here has a short memory, And spoiler warning, it isn't me. That's right, you fucking bit me. Bakugo growled as his hand went to his shoulder, rivulets of blood running down his arm. It's no worse than what would have happened to the audience if Cementos-sensei hadn't stepped in. Genki growled distastefully as he rose to full height, the vents across his back contracting while he drew in as much air as his spiracles would allow. Bakugo, one more attack of that magnitude aimed towards the audience and you'll be disqualified. Midnight announced the moment no casualties were confirmed. TCH. Fine, I don't need my big guns. It's not the size of the weapon, it's how you use it, Bakugo said with a self-satisfied smirk as his palms became alight with peppered explosions. Yeah, that's right. Keep that adrenaline pumping, you smarmy bastard. Genki thought with a grin as he glanced at Bakugo's reddening shirt. You've already painted yourself into a corner, you just don't know it yet. Bring it on, you oily bastard. Bakugo grinned as he launched himself like a bullet. Genki aiming a punch at Bakugo's smug grin. The explosive teen fired a blast beneath himself before grabbing onto his opponent's hair and shoulder. Before he could throw him, however, his hands slipped off, coming away oily. The blonde's eyes going wide, he soon found himself being grabbed, his own momentum being used to brutally slam him back first into the ground with a loud whack. Newsflash, I can change direction in midair too. You're not the only one that knows that trick. Shut it. Bakugo growled as he palmed the ground above his head and fired a cone of shrapnel, his opponent zipping out of range at the last moment. Hey, keep the collateral damage to a minimum. Cementos-sensei worked very hard to make this stage. Do you ever stop talking? Bakugo raged as he lunged and tried to blast him again. Hey, I could say the same about you, but I won't, Genki said as he dodged effortlessly, the teen an oily blur as he zipped away from Bakugo faster than he could close the gap. After a few minutes, it soon became obvious that Genki was trying to tire out his opponent, since for all of aforementioned minutes all he did was verbally insult his opponent until he attacked, dodge out of the way like an oily blur, before repeating the cycle. With each successive heckle and dodge, another vein would angrily throb in the explosive teen's head, his ire rising to untold heights as his attempts to squash the general course student time and time again met with failure. Not only that, but the adrenaline pumping through him caused the bleeding of his shoulder to fall into the back of his mind. Man, you are out of shape. Really ought to do some cardio. Genki taunted as Bakugo panted raggedly, the explosive teen gasping at air while Genki wasn't even winded. You, what the hell did you do to me? Why won't my shoulder stop bleeding? Bakugo growled as his hand went to his shoulder, his fingers starting to get cold. Pop quiz. What does the saliva of a Komodo dragon and a cockroach have in common? Nothing. One's a lizard and the other's a bug. Why would their spit have anything in common? Wow, even when I spell it out for you, you're dense. Genki groaned. Have you always been this stupid, or did you get high on your own supply as a kid? At this, some of one chuckled at the thought of a prepubescent Bakugo huffing nitroglycerin fumes like others huffed paint. You know, Bakugo growled, his brow twitching before a somewhat worrying smile tugged at his lips. I was saving this for Todoroki, but after that last remark, I think you'll make an excellent training dummy. Blasting himself into the air at full blast, a manic grin on his face, Bakugo soared well above the out-of-bound line before he shot himself back at his opponent, rapidly firing off explosions at his sides. Bakugo began spinning in a corkscrew, summoning a cone of acrid gray smoke as he screamed through the air like a falling bomb. His momentum building as his explosions grew more and more ferocious, the teen let out a cry. HOWITZERRRRR. Cannon, Genki roared, thrusting both arms forward in the middle of Bakugo's clutch move. Oil and nitroglycerin meeting in the middle with a brilliant splash. To everyone's shock, Bakugo's ultimate attack was nullified, the blonde's eyes going wide as he began to tumble through the air haplessly, suddenly bereft of propulsion as his explosions were extinguished. Gokiai. Genki intoned as a jet of compressed air spilled out the back of his elbow. Gut punch, he roared as he drove his bruised and battered right arm into Bakugo's stomach. The teen folded almost in half before his momentum carried him into the half of the stage he'd destroyed minutes before. Holy crap, is Bakugo still alive? What the heck happened? Present Mike gawped as all of Bakugo's build-up suddenly stalled worse than Ida's after his ultimate move. For a minute it seemed like Genki had won via KO, but suddenly Bakugo's inert body let out a ragged cough, blood and spittle spattering across ruined concrete as he shakily got onto his hands and knees. A thick, viscous slathering of oil mixed with smoke and debris clinging to his form as he forced himself to his feet. Holy cow, he is still alive. Whatever it was Bakugo was about to do, it's good to know Genki had the foresight to interrupt it, Aizawa hummed aloud, both opponents panting and wheezing heavily. You know, that's the problem with ultimate moves. Genki panted, his arms throbbing painfully as he gulped in as much air as his body would allow. If you don't get to the fucking point, anyone with enough brain cells to rub together can cut you off. slimy bastard. Bakugo growled as he got to his feet, scooping the thick slather of oil coating his face off with a wet splat as it hit the ground, raising his palms menacingly. After a couple moments, Bakugo's eye widened. What the hell? Why won't my quirk work? He demanded as he shook his hands, attempting to detonate his sweat to no avail. Not even knowing your own weakness. How arrogant can you be? Genki roared as he rushed forward and struck Bakugo in the nose with a straight left, the blonde's head whipping back before he braced himself and drove his palm into Genki's exposed side, only for his quirk to once again abandon him. My weakness. Wait a minute, Bakugo thought as he glanced at his palm, at the secretions not his own coating his skin. Looks like the final horse crossed the finish line, Genki said with a smirk as he suddenly grasped Bakugo's palm, their fingers interlaced before he grabbed onto the other. Too bad it won't do you any good. The bug-like teen tightening his grip. Bakugo winced as Genki's fingers dug mercilessly into the gaps between his metacarpals. The oily-haired teen bending the blonde's hands back at the wrists. The pain in his hands on top of the weakening of his body from his shoulder wound caused Bakugo to fall to a knee. Rivulets of oil pouring down Bakugo's arms as Genki's got to work. The teen suddenly felt his fingers going numb for a different reason. Gritting his teeth, Bakugo dug his toes into the ground behind him and tried to rise up, only for Genki to put a foot to his chest and roll onto his back before kicking him off, turning his own momentum against him once more. Geez, recovery girl's going to throw a fit when she sees me like this, Genki groaned as he looked down at his bruised and battered arms, then toward his opponent as he shakily got back to his feet. You bastard, Bakugo growled as he reached down to wipe his palms on his pants, only to be met with oil-soaked cloth. Are you kidding me? He raged, seeing his clothes completely soaked. Wow, guess my double oil cannon was super effective. Genki chuckled heartily, raising Bakugo's ire as the teen laughed at him. By the way, the nickname that Midoriya kid called you, Kaken, sounds cute, like a mascot character. You bastard, don't you mock me. Bakugo raged as he rushed forward, right fist drawn back before lunging at his opponent's smug grin. So tell me, do you even know any other nouns, or is that all you've got? Genki asked as he dodged Bakugo's punches with ease, the blonde's ire raising with every provocation as he continued to hit only air. Bastard. I'll take that as a no. Genki chuckled before he whipped his right arm back, his spiracles dilating as his arm inflated slightly. Goku Lariat, he shouted as he delivered a jet-propelled lariat to Bakugo's exposed neck, the blonde wheezing as he was thrown end over end, flipping through the air before landing flat on his back. Goki curb stomp. Guhah. Bakugo retched as a jet-propelled stomp was delivered to his exposed gut, knocking the wind and copious spittle out of him. So, flat on your back with another man beating your ass. Is it Wednesday already? Genki taunted before a shaky hand grabbed his ankle, splayed fingers raised up at him. Thanks for letting your guard down. Down low. Slap. Are you kidding me? Bakugo cried as Genki's oily palm slapped his just-dried palm in a low five. You know, when your rage button's pressed, you really suck at this, Genki said, grabbing the raised appendage before hauling Bakugo up into a downward punch, blood exploding out of his nose from the head. Are you sure you got the highest score in the entrance exam? It sure doesn't seem like it. Don't you mock me. You hero course reject. Endorsed. I'm going to enjoy this, Genki said with a completely flat expression after several seconds. I'm going to enjoy this far more than I should. Whoa, viewer warning. The following scenes contain blood and gratuitous acts of violence committed against a minor by another minor. Viewer discretion is advised. Present Mike yelped as Genki suddenly pinned Bakugo's arms to the ground with his knees and began punching him repeatedly in the face. The ground at the blonde's shoulder stained red as he continued to bleed out. Give up. Whack. No. Whack. Give up. Whack. No. Whack. Give up. Whack. NOOO. Whack. Man, I have no idea what Gakabari did, but Bakugo's completely helpless down there, isn't he? Present Mike asked as Bakugo continued being punched repeatedly in the face. So it would seem, Aizawa hummed. This boy. Until the sports festival he'd never seen Bakugo's quirk in action. Yet he was able to parse together that inhibiting his sweat's ability to oxidize was his ultimate weakness in such a small amount of time. He mused as he watched Bakugo attempt time and time again to detonate his nitroglycerin secretions, only for a fresh spattering of oil on his palms to knock him back down to square one. Looks like someone did their homework before this match. As the one-sided beating and continued refusal to surrender continued, Aizawa noticed something else about the way the fight was going. Given who Gakabari's parents are and how their quirks blended together, it only makes sense that with this much exposure to his sub-quirk, something like this would happen. Aizawa hummed as Bakugo's flailing arms grew weaker and weaker with each subsequent exposure to the oily-haired teen's sub-quirk. Hey, Midnight. I'm pretty sure this guy's on his last legs. Can you call the match so I can go to the finals? Genki asked a couple minutes later. That is a lot of blood on the ground, he said, looking at the area around Bakugo's shoulder. Don't you dare, you fucking bitch. Bakugo slurred lightheadedly, his arms numbing over. Okay, first off, Genki said as he stood up, that is not how you talk to a lady. Secondly, he said ominously as he raised his foot, looks like this bug stepped on you. The last thing Bakugo saw of that match was the bottom of Genki's shoe. Like a cut to black transition, Bakugo Katsuki is unable to battle. The winner is Gakaberry Genki, Midnight announced after making sure the explosive teen wasn't dead or anything. With the way all that blood was pouring out of his face and shoulder, it almost looked like he could be. What an upset. Gakaberry Genki of the general course moves on to the final round. Present Mike whooped excitedly as the medic bots loaded Bakugo onto a stretcher. Can you believe it? If I weren't seeing it myself, I sure wouldn't. Indeed, while it isn't really my decision to make, I think Gakaberry has a real shot of making it into the hero course. Aizawa hummed noncommittally, the audience exploding into rancorous cheers. MHA. Holy crap, Bakugo too. Kirishima gawped as Genki moved on to the final round. It's like this guy's unstoppable. Mina whined from her first-hand experience. At least Bakugo didn't blow all his clothes off. Suyu chuckled, Minda wilting at the memory while Mina blushed bright red. I told you guys that was an accident. Mina cried, redder in the face than her usual lightish red complexion. But still, how did Genki know Bakugo's weakness like that? Kaminari asked. Yuuei, a familiar, irksome voice said dramatically. How indeed did he find out how Bakugo's quirk worked and what its ultimate weakness was? Said voice said as they continued to troll them. Monoma, Zero gaped at the familiar blonde poking his head over the divider between theirs and 1B's class. The blonde with the ability to copy quirks. You told him how Bakugo's quirk worked. Why? Mina asked. Why indeed? Monoma asked. Why indeed? Wap. To be absolutely blunt, Genki did come up to us and ask before the beginning of his match. Itsuka said, poking her head up. Flashback. The moment the quarterfinal rounds had been completed, Monoma Nito had been ushered out of the 1B spectator box by a hushed tone and a beckoning hand. The blonde quirk copier stepping out into the hall. He and the members of 1B that went with him just in case this was the makings of a villain attack were all shocked to see the recent match winner standing there. Gakaberry Genki, Monoma asked with a raised brow. The heck are you doing here? Tetsu demanded angrily. Can you keep a lid on it? I don't want one to catch on, Genki shushed. Catch on to what? Itsuka asked. Monoma-senpai, Genki addressed formally, the blonde's brow quirking from both the flattering honorific and the fact that Genki dropped down to his knees to boot. You know more about Bakugo Katsuki's quirk than anyone else and one is still willing to talk to me. If I'm going to beat him in the semifinal round, if I'm going to have any chance of beating him, I need every edge I can get, so please, he said, placing his hands on the ground and deeply bowing his head. Please, tell me everything you know about his quirk. Tell me everything you know so I can beat him. Why do you want to beat him so badly you'd bow your head to me? Monoma asked, relishing the fact that someone with such an amazing quirk that had gotten so far into the sports festival was prostrating themselves before him. Because he's a prick. Well, when you put it like that, how could I possibly say no? Monoma said with a face-splitting grin. Flashback end. And that's what happened, Itsuka summarized. Wait, I thought you hated Genki after what he did to Shizaki. Why would you possibly want to help him? Kaminari asked. Because Genki did no different than I would have had our roles were reversed. Itsuka spoke up. Genki aspires to be a great hero like all of us, but in order to reach that plateau, he needs to win and win and win until the Yuuei faculty acknowledges they won't be wasting their time promoting him into the hero course. While it is true that initially I was quite wary of him, now that we've had the chance to cool our heads, I now realize that my previous animosity towards him was wholly unfounded, the user said in an angelic tone, and if Ibara saw fit to forgive him, there really wasn't any reason we couldn't either, Itsuka hummed. And besides, it's so much fun watching him walk all over you. Monoma spoke up the moment he recovered, only to get chopped on the back of the neck a second time. Anyway, there's only one match left, and Todoroki's quirk isn't as nuanced as Bakugo's. But even if he loses that fight, I still like to think he has a really good shot at making it into the hero course, Itsuka said with a soft smile. Even though she lost to him in the cavalry battle, she could still appreciate all the time and effort he put into his quirk to make it that far. And with how much he's been kicking all your butts, it might be one of you on the chopping block. Wap. Geez, it's like this guy's developing an immunity, Itsuka said, chopping Monoma once again. So wait, what is Gakaberry's quirk then? Kirishima asked. Midoriya, you said you figured it out before the match, right? Well, yes, but given the answer's been staring us in the face the entire time, I'm a little embarrassed to admit it took me this long to figure out, Izuku said bashfully. What do you mean? Kirishima asked. He means it's literally in his family name, Kyoka huffed. Holy crap, you're right. Those not in the know collectively gawped. Still, that doesn't explain what happened to Ibara during the cavalry battle, Itsuka hummed. Well, actually, cockroach saliva contains cellulose-destroying enzymes, Izuku spoke up. Since that's what Shizakis are made of, and she's connected to them through her sensory system, it actually makes a great deal of sense she'd react like she were getting an acid bath. How do you know something random like that? Minda asked. Animal Planet. Oh, the rest of Wana hummed, nodding in understanding. The sheer majesty of the animal kingdom is a source of tremendous power, Takoyami stated somberly. His chuny tendencies bleeding through. So anime-like. Well, Gakaberi's family screams terraformers, at least to me. So if Aizawa said that Gakaberi's quirk is a perfect blend of his parents, what sub-quirk did Hi's mother's quirk conceived him? Will he be able to regenerate from crippling wounds and survive from disasters that most living creature usually perish? Like a cockroach, imagine a gaping wound in his torso that looks absolutely disastrous. But he is still alive. Thanks for the chapter. Neonazo 356. Oki said that Genki takes after his father under the hood, so his base stats will at least be comparable to his father's when he's fully grown. But he takes after his mother on the outside, so it'll be easier for him to be a popular hero. From his mother he received the sub-quirks, and, while from his father, he has the potential to grow into the power of a terraformer. However, because he's led an ordinary civilian lifestyle up until now, his upper limits haven't been stress-tested like you'd see in terraformers, or even in My Hero Academia where more rigorous forms of quirk reinforcement occur. Also, most of Genki's character inspiration comes from Arachnid and Caterpillar, but his influences from terraformers are largely secondary. I do intend to read through terraformers because the anime is so badly censored it's borderline unwatchable. MHA. The semifinal round drawing to a close. The excitement in the air was almost palpable. On one side you had the son of the number 2 hero, a boy whose quirk could be considered real-life opus, his opus status even further cemented by the fact that he possessed his father's quirk too. On the other, a general course student whose anonymity swiftly turned to explosive fame as he clawed his way to the top of the sports festival, one event after the other, mowing down all obstacles in his path. His recent victory over the student who'd earned the highest score at the Yuuei entrance exam propelled him even further. Quite a few pro heroes contemplating taking him on as an apprentice if Yuuei was foolish enough not to let him into the hero course even after all he'd done. Of course, since a fight between two elite students who'd exhausted themselves in their previous bouts wouldn't be any fun to watch, the two students were given a half-hour reprieve to fully rest themselves, pending more rest being required so a satisfying match could be held. The Yuuei Sports Festival nearing its conclusion, at least for the first years, those in the second year wondered how they'd be able to top this, since being upstaged by their juniors could seriously damage their brand. MHA. So, when you guys woke up this morning, did any of you think you'd get your butts kicked this badly? Kirishima asked. No, I think I can safely say none of us saw this coming, Shoji said looking up at the tournament bracket, tracing the highlighted lines all the way from the preliminary to the final round. Still, though, I've been doing some research during the intermission, and I think I can understand why Gakaberi was able to elude defeat so many times, Momo said looking at her phone. Cockroaches can squeeze through a crevice as small as quarter of their body height in less than a second. Cockroaches can run at top speeds of up to 50 body lengths per second, equivalent to a human running 200 miles an hour, and only the tightest spaces can slow them down. Cockroaches can withstand forces more than 900 times their body weight without sustaining injury, she read aloud as the video played. To think a mutant-type quirk could allow for so many adaptations and defense mechanisms built into a single body. I could take him, Tsuyu hummed. Yeah, you'd say that, Minda huffed flatly. That's racist. How is that racist? Still, 50 body lengths per second. No wonder he's so fast, Achako said with wide eyes. Indeed, it is no wonder his kin could evade the red blade of judgment, Takoyami hummed, thinking about how difficult it was to actually hit a cockroach with a rolled-up newspaper. Okay, now that was racist, Minda interjected. I'm speaking metaphorically. Yeah, but you just don't say that sort of thing to another mutant, Tsuyu huffed. That's like me asking if you're going to go to the park and give birdseed to your cousins. Actually, with the propagation of mutant-type quirks into the general populace, the line between human and animal has grown blurry in recent years, Izuku said, going off into his own little world about how the definition of human fundamentally changed as more and more quirks showed mutant-type tendencies, particularly those of the animal archetype. But still, he's going up against Todoroki next. And his ice quirk is as opus as it gets, Minda grumbled. I don't think anything Genki has can top that. Yeah, if Gakaberi wants to pull one last win out of his ass, he'd better stand up, Kaminari hummed. So vulgar, Momo cringed while Achako chuckled. MHA. At last we've arrived. The best of the best among Yuui's first years will be decided. Present Mike announced, getting everyone pumped up for the final fight. Representing the hero course we have Todoroki Shoto. Representing the general course we have Gakabari Genki. Yuuei Sports Festival Battle Tournament Final Round. Start. Midnight proclaimed, the enthusiastic crack of her whip resounding through the tournament air even louder than before. Unlike all the previous fights that came before it, however, there was no explosive burst of action or a titanic showing of the elements, only a tense stillness as the two fighters regarded one another. One, the son of the number 2 hero, the other, a complete unknown that had trampled all his way. Both had clawed up the hill vying to be king, and now they were meeting for the final showdown. Alright, how do I approach this? Todoroki thought to himself, keeping his cool and observing the fact that his opponent hadn't yet made a move. While he could have used his ice, the issue lied in the fact that Genki's Goki oil flow, due to the impurities in his secretions, possessed anti-freezing properties. Also, after what happened in Mina's match, the idea wormed its way into his head that even if he wanted to use his quirk, if Genki's oil acted as an insulator for his body, but not for his clothes, he might be written off as some kind of pervert for stripping an opponent of their clothes. Hypothetically, of course. Genki, on the other hand, had similar thoughts ruminating inside his head. While his would definitely protect him from the cold, if he lost his leverage and was immobilized, his anti-icing countermeasures would be meaningless. And even if weren't a factor, Endeavor's most certainly was. And if it wasn't bad enough that bugs in general weren't good with heat, smoke was even worse, especially for him. As such, the two were left at an impasse, neither willing to make the first move until an opening presented itself. Todoroki, in your previous round, you didn't use your left side, Genki muttered aloud, causing the two-tone teen's shoulders to hitch. But, in your fight before then, Midoriya coaxed it out of you, despite whatever issues you had with your father's quirk. What's your point? Shoto bit out. Honestly, between the revelation he was still grappling with, and the words Izuku had spoken to him that shook him to his very core, all he was doing now was going through the motions. My point is, Midoriya helped me realize something too, he said as he began stepping back slowly, the exact opposite of what was expected of him. If I want to become a great hero, heck, if I even want to make it into the hero course, I can't afford to hold anything back. I have to give this tournament everything I have. I'm being polite. I am being very polite right now, Todoroki mused as his opponent stopped a meter from the out-of-bounds line. And if I can't even do that much, I don't deserve to be a hero, Genki yelled passionately. I don't care if you're the son of the number 2 hero. To me, you're just another obstacle, so you only get one warning, he said as he slowly raised his right hand to his face. Try not to die. Those cryptic words spoken, to everyone's shock, Genki then bit down into the meat of his thumb, drawing blood before biting deeper and spattering his face bright red. What came next would shock them to their very cores. Cue My Hero Academia Ost, a huge one appears, angry crimson veins spreading across his body. An angry hissing noise sounded as steam began to rise out of his spiracles. The teen drawing in on himself with a pained expression on his face, jaw clenched with teeth cracking force. His torso suddenly tripled in size, ripping his shirt to shreds. The staccato sound of bones breaking, realigning, and breaking again spreading into the air as spectators' hands went to their mouths. Genki's limbs bent and contorted at unnatural angles as they too experienced a similar surge of monstrous growth. This pressure, I've felt it before, Todoroki shuddered, skin crawling as his opponent's lean runner's build metamorphosed into a bulky brawler's V-shape. Oily chitinous armor beginning to spread across his form. Nearly the entirety of Genki's body now clad in shiny armored plates. Todoroki couldn't help but think back to the monstrous, borderline inhuman vibe given off by the Namu during the USJ incident. Midnight, Cementos, Genki called out, his voice deepening mid-sentence as armored plates formed over his head. Closed eyes snapping open, revealing angular compound eyes as mandibles formed around his lips. I can only keep this up for 30 seconds. After that, the two of you need to hit me with everything you've got. Before the teachers could inquire further, Genki turned his attention toward his opponent. Todoroki, before I lose myself to this power, I will defeat you, Genki roared passionately as his head snapped toward him. Cue My Hero Academia Ost, offense and defense of a threat. Genki's black compound eyes suddenly flashing to green like the awakening of a mecha in its titular genre. The concrete at his feet suddenly exploded as he erupted into movement, the noise of his monstrous footfalls snapping Todoroki out of his shock. The two-tone teen putting his best foot forward, the startings of his signature giant ice wall spilled out of the ground in front of him, the age-old duel between the unstoppable force and the immovable object playing out once more. To quote something a great man once said, Carolina SMAASH, Genki roared as he performed a cross-chop in front of him, splitting the infant glacier in two before it could fully mature. This isn't just muscular cross-section at work. His exoskeleton must be augmenting his strength even further, like a rhinoceros beetle, Todoroki realized as Genki rushed forward unabated. his skin erupting into goose flesh as the oily, armored hide of his opponent bore down on him with the force of a runaway freight train, thundering footsteps rolling over him like an avalanche, instead of the passionate soul-saving words of an aspirant hero. What drew out his flames instead was a primal fear as his opponent's muscles shifted like tectonic plates, monstrous power lying just beneath the surface. The air dyed bright orange as a mantle of flame once again bloomed across the left side of his body, the nearby torches guttering out as he sucked away the nearby oxygen. Todoroki raised an adrenaline-fueled hand, willing the massive plume of fire to roll across the stage like a tidal wave. Detroit at SMASH. Genki roared as he threw a downward punch, while nowhere near the power of the real McCoy. As concrete exploded beneath an armored fist, the updraft that was summoned was still enough to rip Todoroki's flame from the stage and into the heavens. Heterochromatic eyes going wide at the monstrous display of power, Genki's bullet-shaped head snapping up at him. Todoroki was close enough to him to realize that his opponent's green ommatidia were slowly bleeding to a baleful red from the edge in, the hairs on his neck standing up as the green optical panes disappeared one by one. Genki rushing at him once again. Todoroki threw up an ice wall between them only for Genki to punch a hole through it like Bakugo Tsuburaba Kosai. A massive hand clamping around his leg with the force of an industrial vise. Todoroki was hauled off his remaining foot and into the air, his opponent's cry of Oklahoma SMAAASH sounding through the air as he was suddenly spun about. The teen on the verge of blacking out before the hold on his ankle was suddenly released, the teen screaming towards the concrete wall out of bounds at literal breakneck speed. Before Todoroki could hit said wall and paint it a very disgusting color, a blur of yellow suddenly swooped in. "Don't worry, my lad. I've got you," All Might said with a winning smile as he set Todoroki onto his feet, the crowd erupting into cheers at the number one hero's impeccable rescue. That cheer, however, was suddenly cut off as Genki threw his head back, a mix between a roar and a hiss spilling out from between plate and mandible as his body trembled, the last of his green ommatidia giving way to baleful red, glowing ominously like blood in the moonlight. "Endorsed. I think it's time we stop this before someone gets seriously hurt," Aizawa said as he rose from his seat, eyes of black snapping to baleful red, the man's hair standing on end. Aizawa's erasure wave sliced through the air, washing over the transformed teen all the way down on the tournament stage. The transformed teen's crimson ommatidia flickering to an inert black. Genki's guttural roar, hiss died on his lips, silence reigning as he became as still as a statue. Is it over?" Midnight asked off mic, only for inert black to once again snap to baleful red with an ominous hum, the monstrous mutant suddenly thundering towards her. "Oh crap. Whoa there," All Might said as he swooped in between the two, the number one hero's hand catching Genki's thrown punch before intercepting a second. "The match is over, young man. You can clam down now." HIIISSSSSSSSS NNNGH. When Genki said he was going to lose himself to this power, I thought that was just him being a chuny, All Might said through grit teeth as the red-eyed bug tank pushed against him. While nowhere near his full power by any stretch of the imagination, the transformed mutant's strength was still nothing to snuff at. "Well, I can do this all day. I don't really want to, Suo." Cementos and Midnight catching on, the two immediately swung into action. Cementos launching himself onto the stage, the blocky man palmed the ground causing it to undulate, the transformed teen sinking swiftly into the liquefied composite material under his own weight like quicksand, the feral teen flailing as he sunk up to his elbows. As All Might swung around and held his arms at his sides from behind, Genki was left completely exposed to Midnight's finishing move, a flying body splash where she nestled his head betwixt her bosom, the emissions from her smothering him while All Might leapt away. Genki's wild flailing weakening. After a few seconds his baleful red compound eyes flickered from red to green, before shifting to a completely inert black. The entire takedown took only a few moments. The fact that no one was significantly harmed was credit to their swift response and combined experience as pro heroes, and the ample warning that Genki gave beforehand. "Well, that was unexpected," Present Mike announced dumbly. "No, really," Aizawa asked sarcastically. "I was expecting exactly this to happen. But of course, no one did. Many expected Genki to either blitz Todoroki at full speed, or for Todoroki to freeze his opponent solid. No one ever could have expected him going full-on rage mode, putting on a few feet and several hundred pounds, and punching through solid ice or blowing away fire while screaming out some of All Might's signature attacks. Least of all, no one expected three pro heroes to get involved, where previously only one had to intervene in a match. But still, who knew Gakaberi had a full-on berserker mode? Present Mike asked aloud, doing what he could to run damage control since loaded words like berserker would make his loss of control seem like less his fault, thus preserving his marketability for the hero agency. It's to be expected that something like this would happen when he went all out. Being stuck in the general course didn't leave him much avenue to learn how to control this part of himself. And there aren't many places in a civilian setting this ability could be safely trained either, Aizawa hummed, catching on to what Present Mike was doing and running damage control as well. That he had the presence of mind to throw Todoroki out of the ring before he lost complete control of himself, and that he had the foresight to warn us about it beforehand. Short notice that it was, speaks a great deal about his character. He obviously expected that anything less than his very best wouldn't be enough to let him fight the son of the number 2 hero on equal footing, so this may have been the only option he felt was left open to him, especially since he isn't part of the hero course yet. Even making it to the semifinal round isn't any sort of guarantee for promotion. But if he had this kind of stopping power under his belt the entire time, why couldn't he pass the entrance exam and get into the hero course from the start? Like he said before, he could only keep control of himself for 30 seconds. It isn't uncommon for people with transformation abilities stacked on top of pre-existing mutant-type quirks to lose control of themselves. At least one other student in the hero course has a similar, if not the exact same, problem. Okay, but, man, I did not see that coming, Present Mike admitted as the match drew to a close. MHA. Well now, that was certainly unexpected, All Might admitted once everything calmed down, wafts of steam rising from between seams and chitinous armor. Who knew this kid from the general course would rampage in a place like this? Oh, Gen-kun isn't a bad boy. He just needs a little TLC, Midnight cooed softly as she stroked the top of his armored head. The next time you feel like acting out, come see me. I'll be sure to give you a good spanking, she said, giving him a kiss on his armored cheek. Of course, the tender, motherly moment would be swiftly interrupted as the whole of his head snapped off at the neck, dropping Midnight onto her back, leaving her staring into empty, lifeless eyes. The R-rated hero screamed as she flung the severed head into the air, juggling it frantically as she was unable to hold onto it but just as incapable of letting it hit the ground. Myyygood. All Might wailed in English as he stared at the empty space where Genki's head once was, naught but steam spilling out. It took a few seconds for the audience to realize what happened, but soon they too began to panic, openly screaming things like his head fell off, or call an ambulance, or any other number of completely unhelpful comments such as "we're all gonna die." As mothers covered children's eyes and the squeamish emptied the contents of their stomach, Midnight frantically juggling the empty head through the air. The massive armored torso began to dry up at a rapid pace, crumbling to pieces like rice crackers, revealing naught but an empty shell. While Midnight struggled to regain her composure, All Might and Cementos peered into the leg-shaped hole the liquefied concrete had been molded into, groaning tiredly and leaned to one side was a transformed Genki. The whole of his attire utterly destroyed, sans a small amount of his pants, barely enough to preserve his modesty. Steam rising off his reddened skin. After a few moments his complexion returned to its original color, the last puffs of steam wafting away as strips of auxiliary muscle fibers shriveled away before flaking off. Midnight, you can stop freaking out. The kid's just sleeping, All Might called out. Albeit a little malnourished, Cementos hummed, seeing that Genki looked a bit thinner than before. Well, putting on that much muscle had to take a lot of calories, All Might admitted with a chuckle. Even though his small mite form looked like an emaciated skeleton, to even have the energy to use, he had to eat a great deal of food daily like the bodybuilders of the past, making him a bit of an expert on calorie-intensive transformations. So then I didn't take his head off just now? Midnight asked. No, Midnight, you did not, All Might returned. Oh, that's good to know. Midnight sighed as she held the empty shell, only for it to crumble apart in her hands. I think some of it got in my mouth. Phrasing, All Might chuckled. MHA. As a pair of medic robots carried Genki away, a blanket thrown over him to preserve his modesty, while Cementos cleared away the battle tournament stage for the award ceremony, Midnight, her composure regained, addressed the audience. Since Gakaberry threw Todoroki out of bounds before the faculty had to interfere due to issues with his quirk, it's been decided that Gakaberry's victory is still valid. As such, we have our sports festival winner. At this, the crowd erupted into cheers, doubly so for those that loved a good underdog story. After a brief intermission will be the awards ceremony, so don't go anywhere. Present Mike whooped.